Jim Dobis, I appreciate you being here, man. 520 platoon leader, attack company, came up part of the troop surgeon to Baqubah. You guys were an absolute godsend. I think you guys were absolute warriors. And I cannot, in my company, and I will speak on behalf of the guys that were in that sector. You guys showing up was absolutely something that you know, we need it. And again, you guys were our heroes, man. You guys had come up there and really helped us fight a very difficult fight and be able to take the fight to the enemy like it needed to be done. And you guys came up and sacrificed right along with us, and it does not go unappreciated. And you know, just you being able to sit here with me and do a debrief is awesome. So before we jump into the battle for Baqubah, if you could do me a favor and just paint a picture of who Jim was pre-military. If you could just give us an idea of what inspired you to join the Army too. And then we'll jump into your PL time.
Yeah. So growing up, little boy, always played Army on the backyard. I had woods behind my house. That was the thing that we did, playing soldiers. Got a little bit older, had a little bit more piqued interest in the military. Was looking to go to college. I probably wasn't an academic rock star by any means. So I ended up settling on a military school, Valley Forge Military College in Wayne, Pennsylvania, and it really it was a good place for people that needed to increase their grades in order to continue on in college and go someplace else. While I was there, 9/11 happened. Pretty near and dear to me, being having grown up in New Jersey as close to New York City as I did. From places in my town or different sections, you could see the Twin Towers. My father had worked in the what was considered the Customs House. I think it was Building 7 at one point in time, and I visited there several times. Been to the top. Just seeing that hit home, and it kind of solidified my resolve. I'm going to be joining the service, doing something, and that was kind of that was my.
How old were you?
I was a freshman in college. I mean, it was maybe whatever it was, the third or fourth week of school. Yeah.
So Valley Forge Military Academy was a prep school.
Yeah. So they had a prep school, or they had an affiliation to the Air Force Academy for prepsters. They had an affiliation to the Naval Academy for prepsters. Not so much for West Point, because the West Point at the time had their official prep school in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, until that closed. And I think it's now located up here somewhere on the campus. I don't know where, but I wasn't on that track. My grades weren't even probably good enough to get there. But I needed to work on my GPA, work on my studies.
Okay.
It was a good spot for it.
What were you studying?
So I was studying criminal justice. I figured maybe I'll go into law enforcement or something like that down the line. I wasn't really sure. I was kind of undecided. And I really needed to focus on some schoolwork that could boost my GPA. So I didn't want to shoot too high.
Yeah. So, and then 9/11 happens, obviously, pretty close to home.
Yeah.
And what's your next move?
So it was a 2-year school, so I had to apply to get out. I was looking at ROTC scholarships. Right around that time, it was 2003, from what I was told by the recruiting department at Valley Forge, which was assisting me with my ROTC scholarship applications to go elsewhere, was that scholarship money was kind of drying up. So, if you're looking to make your next move, a lot of the state schools, if you join the National Guard, they can help defer some of your costs. The state of New Jersey had a great program for that, where if you join the enlist in the National Guard, you join the ROTC program, you become a cadet with the MOS of 09 Romeo, do your 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, non-deployable status. You get extra money, and it appealed to me. So
Is that considered like the simultaneous membership program?
Yeah, that's exactly
SMP
what it's called,
program?
yeah.
Okay.
Or at least what it was called then, simultaneous membership program. So I did that. I was people would jokingly say, you're a third lieutenant because you wear a rank of a dot instead of a bar or something else. So you'd show up to your drill weekend. I was at an infantry company in Freehold, New Jersey. And they were getting ready for a deployment to the Sinai Peninsula while I was there, which good timing for me because I got some good exposure to what they were going through for their pre-deployment. And then once they were gone, there was the rear detachment commander that was there. It was a second lieutenant who was non-deployable because he didn't have his infantry officer basic course. And then me, a couple other cadets, and then there would start to be some privates and stuff that would rotate in. Okay. There was a couple NCOs, so I actually got to do a lot more than one would probably expect of a cadet. Learned a lot, did a lot of help. I couldn't officiate, but I helped with a lot of 100% inventory. So there was a lot of germane junior officer things that I was able to pick up on and learn, which eventually helped me down the line once I really stepped into the role as second lieutenant 520.
So how'd you get into the infantry? What was your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it was like, there was the phrase at the time, it was there's infantry and there's infantry support, and 9/11 having happened, I was looking to go kick ass. That was my motivation. I was there for the great adventure of going out and getting retribution for what happened.
Rightly so.
Absolutely.
Rightly so. I can't argue with that. And so that's did you wound up transition to schools too, right? So the SMP program. Did you go to Rutgers?
Yes.
Okay, so you did. All right. Yeah. And then Rutgers ROTC. Correct. You wind up commissioning through their program.
Correct. Yeah. So I did. So my junior and senior year of college, I was at Rutgers University in the New Brunswick campus. There's a couple of different campuses as part of it, but that's their main campus. Went through my last 2 years, the MS3 and 4 year. I had my goal on being infantry, selected that as my branch. I checked the box for what they call branch detail, which kind of, you can almost solidify your combat arms branch if you check the branch detail box, and then you kind of belong to another branch. Yeah. So eventually I guess you would say I was a military intelligence officer that was detailed to infantry. Okay. So I did my initial infantry, and then the idea was after I become a captain, I would go to their career course to be a military intelligence officer. Whew. So I wasn't even looking that far ahead, like, hey, cross that bridge when I get to it. Maybe there's something that I could do. I wasn't really interested in being a military intelligence officer. So it's kind of part of the reason why I got out. But I mean, that's kind of the end of our story here today, I guess.
Branch detailed infantry.
Right.
Then you go to infantry officer basic course. Correct. Yeah. And what year is this? What year did you go to school?
So that was 2005. I graduated. I think it was end of May 25th or 26th, something like that. I ended up on active duty 1 or 2 days later. Had a heck of a time just getting out of there. My second to last trip, moving myself or moving my property out of my house at school to my parents' garage. I was driving home and I nailed a deer, and I needed my car to get me from my first stop TDY en route, which was at LTC in Fort Knox. So I nailed the deer. I had to hop a ride with somebody else to get to Fort Knox, and it was just a lot going on at the time. So ended up at Fort Knox for about 5 weeks, which was good. To start my time, start getting paid, get your feet wet, like doing good PT every day, just getting ready for everything that was going to be coming at ILBC, which I guess they changed the name. It's IBOLIC now. But it was a good time. Met a lot of guys that were going down to ILBC as well. And we all ended up reporting. We left. We went to LTC to help train cadets, and then got to IBOLIC right around the 4th of July weekend. Checked in there. The staff duty officer, first sergeant, whoever was leave behind, gave us all passes for the weekend, just to get out, because there was nothing for them to do with us or for us to do there. And then we, within a couple of weeks, picked up a company there. Was slotted into a platoon. Very formative experience, I'd have to say. We had a fair amount of combat experience within the platoon at that point in time in 2005. Our platoon sergeant was this guy David Easterbrooks, who was a guy from 375 who was in Mogadishu, and there were some. He was in Afghanistan and Iraq, both invasions. I think he jumped in Afghanistan, and he had hand selected a couple of lieutenants that were coming through OCS that came from Ranger Battalion to come and be in our platoon. So we had 3 of them. So we had 3 tabbed combat experience Ranger regiment guys, 1 per squad, and then we had another couple guys that went through OCS or whatever their commissioning source was, came from Ranger Regiment, a couple guys from the 82nd Airborne Division. So we had a lot of good combat experience guys that could kind of share a lot of experiences and give us a good idea of what we would be exposed to moving forward outside of the traditional, this is the program of instruction that we have to teach you about some nuanced Army thing that, we're not really going to need that for what we're going into. Like we need to focus on this. So it was a good experience. And, I look back on some of the lessons and when I was deployed, some of the things that other guys were putting down for us to learn about. It helped a lot.
Okay. So what's your what's your next move?
Yeah, I got done with IOBC. They graduated our class a little bit early to try to get folks into the next Ranger school slot. I wasn't selected for it. I had to work on my pull-ups. They said go to airborne school. It'll help you with your pull-ups. It did, but unfortunately the next Ranger school slot that came available was not until like February.
Right.
Went there, double no-go land nav, so that was an automatic. You're back to the gulag, which was the holdover barracks, and I was there. There was another buddy of mine that was in my squad in IOBC. He was a PT test failure. We were sitting there. We're like, I can't believe this. We're just sitting here in this austere room. He got pulled on a detail to go like chop down trees, and it was coming up on Best Ranger. They had guys that were starting to collect rocks to paint them black and gold. I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't.
Right.
I have orders to go to my unit.
You already knew you were going to 520?
No, I didn't. They didn't pinpoint the battalion yet. They had the brigade, and I said, my brigade's deploying. My buddy Kenny's brigade was the 25th ID Striker Brigade that was at Fort Lewis. They were going back to Fort Lewis, reflagging to 2nd Striker Cavalry Regiment in Fort Lewis, and then going to Germany, where they still are today in Bielsk. So he knew he had time, and so he was like, whatever, I'm just going to stay here. I'm getting out. Took a lot of shit for it. I'd have to go before the commanders, the battalion commander, who's the guy is now, he's a 4-star general. He's the vice chief of staff of the Army. I just saw him on TV the other day. I couldn't believe it because he was actually our platoon's mentor when I was in IOBC. Mingus, yeah, General Mingus. Had to go before him, and he was a little bit indifferent. The brigade commander, the whatever they call him, the regiment commander for Ranger School was indifferent. The sergeant major was like, the Ranger tab is a life insurance policy for your troops. I was confident in myself. I knew I'd do all right. And at the end of the day, we did. I brought all my guys home. So, felt good about that. So, I knew I'd be back.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting, you catch some shit because your unit's deploying and you just want to get into the fight, and not sit there and paint rocks for,
God knows how long.
God knows how long until you get back into another class, right? That's a tough position to be in. So you make the call. How soon before you're at 2ID?
Oh my God, I got back to. I had to check back into the battalion that runs IOBC. I was there maybe, I don't know, 2-3 days, and they were already stamping my leave form. You're out. You got 8 days, starting whatever it was tomorrow, to get yourself to Fort Lewis, Washington, whatever. Yeah, it was about 8 days.
8 days. Okay.
Yeah,
Cross country.
So, I had to make a pit stop in New Jersey to get all my stuff out of the garage. So,
good. Okay. Yeah. Then
So
that's
that
not on the way to Fort Lewis, Washington, right?
No.
All right. So you grab your stuff from your mom and dad's garage.
Yeah, drove through the
haul
night.
ass across country.
Yeah.
Get to the sunny state of Washington.
Yeah.
Check in at Fort Lewis. Go to 5. Now, you knew you were going to 3rd Brigade, but you didn't know you were going to 520?
Yeah, I knew I was going to 3rd Brigade. They didn't pinpoint the battalion that you were going to. So, when you check in on post, they just say, depending on everybody's orders, that everybody had different orders coming onto post. They were like, you go to this building, you go to that building. Sir, you have to go to the S1 shop at 32. This is the building number.
Right.
Check in there, and they'll give you your battalion. And it was just it was a clerk in a building, and they said, 520. And that was maybe like a Friday. Yeah, it was like a Friday, and they said, be there on Monday morning. It's like, cool, okay. I remember getting in the car and driving down just to do a recon, check it out, see where I'm going. I think we were still wearing BDUs then. Probably polish my boots or something just to, it was kind of like the nervous shit. It's like, here it is, like everything that you've been waiting for. Like, I'm gonna actually go check in my unit, get a platoon, and I'm gonna go into combat. Everything's gonna be great and wonderful. So,
was everything great and wonderful?
I would say it was a little bit different than what I had expected on the first day. Checked in the morning, 9 o'clock, when it was kind of like a work call. Guys were just coming out from PT. The S1 was just drinking some coffee. He's like, why don't you go hang out in the S3 shop? There was just, a guy in BDUs and his t-shirt sitting there. He's like, hey, sir, you want a cup of coffee or anything? Have a seat. And this was the operations sergeant major. He was just real chill. Like, go ahead, go have a seat. I guess whenever they need you or something, did you eat breakfast yet? You can go get chow. It was pretty relaxed. It put me at ease, about whatever was going to come next. The S1 then came and got me and another second lieutenant that had checked in. I don't remember seeing him around IOBC at all. Brought us into his office, did some admin paperwork, told us about the Cup and Flower Fund. And, they were right away, hey, can you give us a check for $35? Just that way, it's like, okay, here you go. Here's a check for this. Met the XO individually, battalion XO individually, and then so I got called into the battalion commander's office to meet with him, so he could get, I guess, the warm and fuzzy, what he was, who the two new lieutenants were. Asked a couple of questions like where are you from? What do you do? Where'd you go to school? What happened at Ranger School? Go through that spiel again. It was very matter of fact, like, hey, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get here. He didn't really have anything much to say about that. He just said that, his team was set, and if something came available, let us know. Report to the S3 shop, and went to the S3 shop. Met the S3 Major. I guess he retired now, Colonel Vantras. He was cool. He was going through some of the new equipment that he had just picked up from CIF. New helmet, this, that, and everything. He said, you guys are going to get this stuff here pretty soon. Why don't you just meet the other assistant S3s and figure things out. There was a Captain Gore, who's now colonel. I think he's a colonel still in. They were all nice, but everybody was busy. They were busy doing their thing, rocking, and we were just like, okay, there's a couple of new guys here.
I can imagine, because they're how many weeks out from deployment?
Yeah, we were about 5 weeks out, and they were still trying to pack some training in. So there was a battalion a command and staff meeting later on that afternoon. Company commanders, first sergeants, the whole staff, everybody was sitting around. They introduced us, but then, they were getting right down to business. They were going to put on a live fire, do this, that, and everything else. Got done with the meeting, went back in the S3's office. We're back in the shop, and the S3 came out as, hey, Dobis, go over to attack company. You're going to pick up a platoon. Okay. I thought the team was set this morning, but whatever. We went over there, met with the XO, Rich Cliff, and all the other platoon leaders and the FSO in his office. I think the commander, Hank Barnes, was on leave at the time. Met the first sergeant, Montgomery. They pretty much told me that the guy that was there in the MGS platoon, which in the Stryker company, MTO, it was at the time at least 3 rifle platoons and then a MGS platoon, which the MGS is a variant of a Stryker mobile gun system. So it's a tank basically on a Stryker chassis, but they hadn't fielded it yet. So they had the ATGM variant, which has the tow missiles on top, and it was tank MOS soldiers, and they had a tank MOS platoon leader, but they didn't have any more 19 alphas lying around. So they said, look, you figure this out with the MGS guys, and when a rifle platoon comes open, you can have it, So I went over there to do that. The platoon leader had gotten in some trouble, and he just had to get rotated out.
Okay. So, well, one person's misfortunes and another person's
Right. Yeah.
good fortune, right?
Yep.
And so now you got your platoon.
Yeah. So, at that point, I think the workday was over. Most everybody was already gone. My platoon sergeant, I hadn't met him yet, was gone. Kenneth Howard. I don't think I met him until the next morning. But, showed up the next morning, met the platoon leader that I was relieving. He was going to hang out for a day, clean his office out, do kind of a little transition. And then I was going to come in. I think we did, for PT, we did flag football. And I think the guys really had a good time playing with me, because I wasn't like real stiff with them and rigid. I was kind of like used to
just jump right in and play some football. That's a good way to break the ice, right?
To get them off balance. Like, hey, what are you doing, sir? Like, fuck out of here, and, just hip check a couple of them a little bit. So they knew that I was a good dude. I wasn't. It just wasn't like a stiff that was coming in.
Yeah, man, there's people come in pretty well and tight.
Yeah. So
clock's ticking.
Yeah, the clock's ticking. And we were going. I think one of the first things we did was a platoon live fire, because that was one of the last things they wanted to get out of the way before it backed up the trucks to ship them. My platoon wasn't packing out any trucks. Ours were getting refurbished for something. We were going to pick up trucks from the unit that we were leaving in Iraq. So we didn't have a whole lot to do on that aspect, and the platoon live fires were centric to the rifle platoons. However, what the company commander envisioned for his set once we got to Iraq was that I would end up as the MGS platoon absorb a section from the mortars, and then we would roll out and conduct like a degraded platoon type mission. So I'd have enough, about a squad's worth of people to put on the ground, including myself, to go out and do something while the trucks were in support of us.
Okay.
And we could be a little bit of a force multiplier, or at least, you know, working out a cordon or something like that. So we were just like trying to figure something out, but wanted to make sure that we got a good platoon live fire approach of a squad size objective, enter a building, clear a room, break it down, basically conduct a raid, a squad raid, get back on the trucks and exfil out. So that was the long and short of it. Went through the orders process. You know, I was like jittery, nervous, like, oh my God, this is the first time I'm doing this. It's like, and I don't know why I was. I should just reverted back to like everything I've ever learned. You know, just keep it simple. I think I did it on a map board. The other platoon leaders were busy doing it on PowerPoints. A couple of the other guys that were of a lot of help to me. A Lieutenant Prysock from 2nd Platoon, who I ended up taking over for him later on, and the fire support officer, Lieutenant Cheek. They were really helpful and informative in doing things. Cheek was like, you know, everybody else is doing a PowerPoint, but I respect the map board. So I brought my map board up, you know, the battalion commander, to run through my flips and everything that we were going to do. Everybody else had a PowerPoint. I was like, why didn't I just do a PowerPoint? You know, it's like I put a target on my back, you know, by being so unique. But
unique's not a bad thing, man.
It worked out. It worked out in the end. You know, we executed the live fire. The guys had a good time with it because they didn't usually get to participate in everything that all the rifle platoons were doing. And, you know, it's cool, you know, enter a building and shoot a bunch of targets. You know, it was a little bit of a train up to it, you know, having to go to the shoot houses before end up going out and doing that. And then they wanted to put a couple extra training events on. Most of it got fragged. I mean, they wanted to go do a hand grenade range and a CS chamber, and they wanted me to run. I think they wanted me to run the CS range. My platoon sergeant was like, "How come we keep on it?" It's because you're a new lieutenant. They want to see how you do.
Yeah, pile it on you.
Run a PT test.
Right on. So let's jump to like as you guys were leaving, like getting. So you already got your platoon. So let's jump to loading things up and onward movement, man.
Yeah, I mean it was pretty surreal. I mean we were doing, you know, the 100% on equipment because of everything that was going to get packed up in sensitive items, mill vans, and this one and that one, and whatever else was going. That just seemed to be like a constant, like all day, all night, before PT, after hours. It was always something going. I can remember my parents coming out to visit, you know, hey, we're going to see you before you go, and I wouldn't get home until like 8, 9 o'clock at night. Like, what's going on? I'm working you too hard. I'm like, it's the army.
Get ready to go to war.
Yeah, we're packing everything up to go and put on a ship and then fly halfway across the world. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a busy time. So much going on. Like you barely had any time to take personal inventory for it. You know, I think I had my apartment with a mattress on the floor or a futon or something, a TV on a cardboard box. Like, you know, it wasn't
a lap of luxury.
It wasn't a lap of luxury, but I didn't really need much more. I didn't really care. You know, I was getting ready for the great adventure. You know, it wasn't.
There's one less thing to worry about. It's furniture. Right?
Yeah.
So you guys put your stuff on the ship. Eventually, y'all linked up over in Kuwait for a little bit.
Yep. The date in my mind, it just sticks out. I think it was like the 26th of June. We left Fort Lewis, Washington, flew through Maine. I remember, you know, there were people trying to get in line to get lobster rolls. And I kept on thinking, like, when we're going to go to a Muslim country in the Middle East, I want a BLT before we get there. And they had like this awesome looking BLT. At least it looked real awesome in the picture, you know, on the menu. It was good. Don't get me wrong, but it probably wasn't the best BLT I ever had. But I think it was the last piece of, I guess, real bacon. I guess, you know, that I had before we deployed. Got there, and then before we knew it, back on the planes, you know, fly to Germany. There was like a little hut in Germany that everybody kind of went to. There was a plane of Marines that was coming back. There was us there. They were allowed to drink. We weren't. I mean, it was just like a, you know, one of those weird things. They were happy. We were like, you know, pensive, I guess, a little on edge. Got to Kuwait. It was hot. It was hot. I mean, Kuwait,
in June?
Kuwait in June. Oh my God. Vegas, Phoenix doesn't really do it justice. I mean, it's like such next level heat, and then the afternoon sandstorms that would come through. I mean, just oh my God, hot. And I remember driving from the airport to, I guess it was whatever the air base. God, if you said it, I know it. But we went from there, from the air base over to Buhriz, and it was just big tents, big circus tents. Bus pulls up, get out, go into the big circus tent, and it was like at one company per tent. And then they finally refitted a footprint for us where it was at least like two platoons per tent, and then you know the rest of the company, like the MGS platoon, was in with 2 platoons, and then the company command section, you know, supply sergeant, everybody else was tucked away within another tent. So we got to spread out a little bit. The big idea was that we were going to work on a reverse training schedule, which was really idealistic. But then I guess MPRI showed up and they were like, well, no, you're going to come out and do a lane here in the middle of the day. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. We were like, well, we thought we were going to be training at night and sleeping in the day so that way we're not out, you know, in this oppressive heat, and just went totally out the window. And then the maintenance schedule, when the trucks arrived in port, sending people down to pick them up. So it was just, it didn't happen. It was basically you're up at night, you're up in the day, you sleep when you can, and it was about 2.5, 3 weeks of just doing that, unpacking, and then packing, and then moving north.
And move north. Where was your platoon at 100% strength? How big was your platoon? How many men?
So the MGS platoon was platoon leader, platoon sergeant E7, and a senior E6. So we had organically 3 trucks. It would have been a 3 MGS truck platoon, but we were slated to have 3 ATGM variant strikers. Had an E5 gunner with me, and then you know, like a promotable E4 that would ride with the E6, and a promotable E4 that would ride with the E7. So they were kind of getting their nurturing to bring them past.
So you got a driver, a gunner, TC,
loader on each one of the trucks. So that's
12.
4-man, 12 trucks, or 12 men for the 3 trucks. And then we picked up the mortar section. I picked up an FO. And
did you have a medic?
And then we did pick up a medic. Yeah, we picked up a medic too. I don't think
how big was the mortar section? So that was 12. Then you got the mortar section. Was that 1 tube section?
A 1 tube, yeah. A one mortar variant striker section. So we had 120 millimeter mortar.
2. Okay, nice.
Assigned to the company.
Oh,
and so they had a E6 and then 2 E5s that ran their sections, drivers for each one of the trucks, and then the gunner and the loader for each one of the tubes. So they had about 4 people per section. Plus, I feel like they had like a couple of extra floaters around. So I picked up one of their sections, Sergeant Barryuga and his guys, and they were great. I mean, they They were awesome. They were smart. The tanker guys were smart, knowledgeable. They were just on it with their PMCS, the way they kept their vehicles. When they get on the ground, they were just they were so focused, really. They were really a pleasure to work with.
So up to that point, had you ever even worked on a striker before going to Fort Lewis, like at IOBC or anything? Have you ever even seen one?
They were just they had been developing a striker leaders course during the time that I was at Fort Benning, but they hadn't gotten it there yet.
Wow.
They hadn't gotten across the line. When I was in ROTC at Rutgers, the E8, the senior
Military instructor,
military instructor, came from 3-2. He was.
He did. Wow, how ironic was that?
Yeah, he was a first sergeant from 123 Infantry,
Okay.
the Tomahawks, who ended up coming up to Baqubah.
Yeah.
So once I got my orders, I started picking his brain on different things. He knew the infantry unit that I was in, the National Guard. It was a mech unit, but mech National Guard at the time was 113s.
Oh wow.
He said it's the same kind of idea. You got 4 trucks in the platoon.
Yeah.
You had 4 tracks. The strikers, you got 250s, 2 marks. You had 4 50 cals there, and it's just your guys in the back of the truck. It's just a method of getting back and forth someplace.
Yeah.
You're talking track versus tires. The tires are easier to change than track, but you'll figure it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, all right, hey, great advice.
So your platoon plus a section of mortars, that's plus a medic plus an FSO, or at least an FO, right?
Yep.
FO. Okay, so you got a little bit of juice.
We got a little squad that we could put on the ground.
Yeah. Where'd you guys wind up going into Iraq first?
We went to Mosul. We were going to rip with 172nd Striker Brigade combat team up in Mosul. It was the battalion was the Buffaloes, 117 Infantry, and as they were ripping with us, they got fragged to extend to a 15-month deployment.
Really?
And their mission was to take their battalion and go south to Baghdad. And they were going to be like a 911 force, landowner, something going on down there. We didn't really pay too much about it. They were very unhappy. They already had, I think, about 300 people that had totally redeployed to Alaska from the brigade.
Oh,
that had to get back on the plane,
snap,
and then come back in the country to catch up with.
My goodness,
them heading south to Baghdad. So yeah, there was that was tough. And then they had a tough time in Baghdad too, because they were getting sniped out left and right. They lost a ton of guys down there. So it was, it was tough. It was tough all the way around. And the tough part for me was that, as I was saying before, when we were getting ready to deploy, I didn't have ATGMs to bring with me. Ours were getting rotated out and refitted. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were going to fall in on their equipment, and they were going to go home with no ATGMs. So we were just going to get theirs. Well, there was a piss and match, like who's going to take what. At the end of the day, 172nd won. They were taking their ATGMs down south to Baghdad. So I had no trucks. So for about...
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So
right.
For about a week, my company commander mulled it over. Colonel Barnes, Hank Barnes, he's a colonel now. I bumped into him last year at the Army 10 miler. Still a stud out there running 8-minute miles for 10 miles. And he decided that he was going to break the platoons down to 3 trucks apiece and then give me 3 trucks. So I would get each rifle platoon's 4th truck, and they were gonna roll with 3 trucks. So there would be 4 platoons with 3 trucks apiece that would roll out.
Those crews just become dismounts and
Right.
The part of the infantry squads. Right. Okay.
But there were enough other tasks that it kind of made sense personnel wise, and that's, we got empathetic as coming into other people's AOs when we got down to Baghdad and Baqubah, because we knew what it was like to be a landowner, because there's personnel requirements like you have to man 2 towers, you have to have somebody at this gate, you have to have somebody at that, there's somebody who needs to be stringing concertina wire. So there was never, between guys that were on leave and all the other duties that people would get pulled for, somebody needs to go be a head counter at the DFAC.
Isn't that crazy, man?
We were attriting people just to run battle space.
Yeah, a lot of people lose sight of that. Like, there's a whole plethora of other additional duties that need to be covered down. By the way, you still have to send people home on leave, right?
Right.
And that was an interesting solution to a difficult problem.
Yeah, but it worked. We had a little more space inside the back of the striker because we had less people to put in, so guys got to spread out, which was good. I think we had 350 cals. Nobody gave up a Mark 19. It was good because at that time, ROE wise, I think that they were asking that we would request approval to engage a target with a Mark 19. So we didn't even have to worry about that. Because of our MTO having the ATGM variant, we also had a complement of extra 240 Bravos. So we had 3 240 Bravos that we could put on top. So we had a lot of ass that we could bring out outside the wire, which was good. And then we were starting to get like all the other good stuff that you'd get in country. Squad designated marksman rifles. They were basically like retrofitted M14s, scopes, and everything else. So we had a lot of good equipment. We did the first small kill team for our company. I think even for the battalion, I had to kind of tailor it a little bit differently and run it out of a cot up in western Mosul. It was right along around Tampa. Didn't have any action that we took for like a small kill team. We were overwatching a tier 1 traffic site. A whole bunch of route clearance teams that came through during the day, and then there was a huge firefight that took place a block next to us between IP and AIF. We thought we were in contact; they were attacking us, but it was just a death blossom that was occurring on the other block. But it all worked out for them. We couldn't see anything, but it was a good time. Mosul was fun. It was
overall
like the creme de la creme, I would say. Our deployment, if I had to rate it, started great and then went downhill. Whereas, like, I guess most other deployments, you start by sleeping in a trench and then you work your way up to a bed. We started in a bed and worked our way down to.
Yeah. How much time did you spend in Mosul?
I think we were there maybe. So we got there in the middle of July, like right after the 4th of July, and then we left shortly after Thanksgiving. I think our first main body left about the week after Thanksgiving to head down to Baghdad.
Right.
We got relieved by a brigade from first Cav. I forget which brigade it was, but I mean they were heavy brigade that came up
into Mosul.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were going to park their Brads and Abrams. I know that was their plan at first, and they had a whole bunch of I guess whatever reserve Humvees they have in theater that they were going to roll out with, but eventually, they just had to switch and start rolling in their Brads, from what I heard.
From down there, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Huh? Off to Baghdad, 520 goes.
Yeah.
What was y'all's mission there?
So, I mean, just essentially to get down was a mission in and of itself. Main body for the battalion left ahead of our company. Our company was to be a reserve QRF for 2-3 infantry patriots who were going to do a in-march assault or raid on a compound around Lake Tartar, which was along the route of travel going south on Tampa. So the majority of the company, first and third platoon. By this point, I should also mention that I had changed out from the MGS platoon to the second platoon.
Oh, that come about.
Oh, I mean, I guess a relief for the platoon leader. Just to put it politely, but that I ended up.
It was an administrative move versus like he got wounded or injured or something.
Move. I mean, it was a very matter of fact. Like, I think I came in to the company CP at, I don't know, I was still a second lieutenant. I hadn't been promoted yet. After a patrol, and the commander was like, "Hey, you're going to rip out with Price Sock," and that was it.
Okay.
Just went, met him, like,
boom,
"Hey,
done.
Here's your rifle." He had to go up to battalion because he was going to go to the S3 shop. This other guy, Rick Vespa, who I had came to the battalion with, came down. He knocked on my door. He's like, "Hey, I'm taking the MGS platoon." I was like, "Okay, well, this is the room. I'll leave my rifle here. I got to go pick up that rifle there." And it was just like everything, like, try to do like between our patrol schedule.
Shift one seat over, sit down, and get after it again.
Yeah. But it was I think it was pretty easy. I already had good familiarity with all the guys in the company to begin with.
Yeah.
So it was really, I knew my platoon sergeant from beforehand, just being in the company. Sergeant Gantz, Roger, knew the squad leaders.
Got a couple more boots on the ground now, right?
A couple more boots on the ground, yeah. And
what size of striker platoon that you took over?
I think if I can recall, like, the most that we ever had was about 42. I think we were usually rolling somewhere around 36 or maybe less between leave and all the other things that would take up.
Yeah, I remember when the strikers had come up, man, because like in a mech company, mech platoon, you get 34 guys, and that's typically, driver, gunner, Bradley commander, times that by 4, and then the rest are dismounts. So maybe you have an 8-man squad if you're lucky, but it's only 2 squads. Yeah. So it's
we were 3 full squads on the ground with 2 guns.
Yeah, lots of boots on the ground compared to a mech unit.
Yeah, I think that was significant for the role that we played and how we were able to assist in a lot of the areas in Baghdad. You guys in Baqubah, we could put more people on the ground.
Yeah.
Eventually, we learned a lot of lessons in Baghdad and Adamia with the hand grenades that they throw around there. You got to keep an extra person on the truck, not necessarily for any other reason, but just to have a third person on the truck, somebody that can watch out a back hatch, somebody that can keep an eye on a rooftop, and then closing hatches. God forbid you left one open, or leave demo on the roof, because they were crazy throwing.
What area of Baghdad do you recall?
That was Adamia. And they were hand grenade crazy. That's where I think they were the Spaders from First ID out of Germany. They had a kid that got a Medal of Honor there. There was a whole book that was written about them. They were in. I mean, it was similar to like a Tahrir, like a Bone Disney type high intensity combat on any given day. We were sent there to go help them clear some areas, and you'd read SIGACs and everything that's going on in the area. It always kind of seemed like when our battalion would show up, like everything would stop, and they kind of felt like it was a good breather having us there. Do a limited clearance operation, pack up shop. As we're rolling out, everybody starts throwing hand grenades. Yeah, and they would just come from rooftops, out windows. Wow. You'd never see who did it or exactly where it come from. I know our mortars platoon sergeant and from headquarters and his truck, they had a hand grenade laying right in the middle. Right in the middle, they're open because it's got a mortar bearing. It's got the 2 open hatches on the top. Hand grenade laying in the middle. Wounded everybody on the inside. I mean, they were dangerous, man.
Yeah,
dangerous.
It's interesting. I interviewed 3rd Brigade's Sergeant Major, who was a battalion sergeant major for a previous deployment, and they were in and around Baghdad. And I asked him, I said, what was the most lethal threat you guys had? He said, hand grenades, man.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact, like he said that there was roads called like Hand Grenade Alley and like Purple Heart Lane, and it was just all due to, hand grenades. So
it was literally the enemy TTP was like they knew where we were set, they knew we were going to leave, and they knew pretty much which way we were going to go.
yeah,
So the minute we pick up, that's when they seem to throw.
yeah,
But that was like a TTP from Adamia. I mean, some of the other different neighborhoods were a little bit different. That was a predominantly Sunni neighborhood. Most of the Shia neighborhoods, you were constantly worried about EFPs because they were building them into the sidewalks, and the sidewalks were little concrete blocks that are replaceable. You take one piece of concrete out, you put one in.
yeah.
So they were making them out of foam, and then having the array of EFP on the back, and then painting the front so it would look like whatever the sidewalk should look like.
I've seen a couple different variants of that, and they were getting pretty creative.
Oh yeah,
Super creative. Yeah. So, what was the main mission in Baghdad?
So I was told by General Chirelli, who was the Corps commander, on Thanksgiving, just before we stepped off to go down there, that our mission was to be the Corps 911 force.
Okay.
So while whatever came up in multinational Corps Iraq, where they needed to flex some muscle, it was going to be our brigade that was going to get tasked to do it. If they needed to go back into Fallujah, we were going to go. If they needed to go here, we were going to go. We were just going to get tasked out. So we weren't going to have to worry about land ownership. I think for our little part on Camp Taji where we were staying, we had to do some force protection. So we had some towers that we had to man and some of those things, but it wasn't really heavy on that. It was more so get your trucks ready, be ready. You're going to get a mission. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he also said, you're going to be the first unit of this surge. Like first unit, we've been here since June, So they called us the first unit of the surge, or somebody gave us that moniker. And what ended up happening was we would go on clearance operations into neighborhoods that units had not been into, because the previous plan or strategy had been that we were going to pull back and let the Iraqis take the front seat, bring them out. We were doing that in Mosul. We would go out on patrol. We would put the Iraqis out front, let them take the lead, be visibly in the front, securing their community, and we're here to back them up. They would do safety, or it was like a stand down day. Everybody would stay in the wire except for route clearance and QRF. And if route clearance needed EOD, the QRF would come out in the system. So I think they fell into that strategy in Baghdad for so long that once they said they were starting to implement, the search strategies, which are kind of like broken windows theory, basic like law enforcement things from back in the early 90s in New York City. Okay, we got to get back out in these neighborhoods. Well, they're all little fortresses now, because it's the militias that control that area have established dominance on it, and they're running the IP.
Did you experience that in Mosul and Iraq, or excuse me, Mosul and Baghdad?
So there was a strategy in Mosul, but we were always out. We didn't have to fight to get into any neighborhood. We operated pretty freely wherever we wanted. There was one intersection that we would try to avoid at all costs, along Route Tampa, where it intersected with Barracuda, because it was an NAI that was black on the map, because they'd always find an IED there. It was the only place where we'd have a complex attack, if at all. I mean, they would drive a car bomb into a striker. Strikers would survive them, and everybody would be okay, for the most part. So that was it. I mean, that was like the only piece of terrain that was really kind of like no-go off limits. But even still, we'd end up.
That was the Mosul side.
Through, yeah.
And what about Baghdad?
Baghdad, different, big, huge. By comparison, it was like a couple of Mosuls. Just before going out into Baghdad, you'd have to check with the TOC, route clearance, all the routes, because there were so many route clearance teams that were working on so many different schedules. How long has it been since a route has been cleared?
Yeah.
What status is it in right now? When's the next time somebody else is going to be going out to clear that route? What units in contact with what, where. They had the entirety of Route Pluto was black, down to
Wow, a whole route black.
yeah, which it basically ran along Sadr City on the east side. It started at the top, so if you were coming from Taji from the north, you'd come down. I think it was Route Brewers, and then it would split where you could go over by Adamiyah, closer to the Tigris River, which you could cross over to go to the green zone on the west side, or you could go Pluto if you stayed to the left. And Pluto was just completely black because they had so many EFPs on it. It didn't make sense to even try to clear it at the time. So that was a completely black route. And then also once you got down there into Baghdad, you were bouncing through other people's battle space, and we didn't have clear FM comms back to our TOC. So a lot of it was FBCB2 messengers.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
back and forth. So you always had to have like somebody that had their ear to like a message that was popping up just to see what we needed to know about wherever we were going. So it was good to have those communications. I'm sure it's probably a lot faster now, especially with technology and the way things are.
What was the level of intensity, the combat that you guys were experiencing in Baghdad? I mean,
for the most part, it would be like pot shots. We go to an area to start a clearance operation. You get a couple pot shots in the beginning, maybe an IED on an infill. Depending on the route that had to get cleared, we did a raid on this guy. His name was Sheikh Ubaidi, I believe, who was supposed to be a number 2 to Muqtada al-Sadr. And he was all the way up Route Predators. And Route Predators was black. They only cleared it every now and again just to get supplies up. I think there was a fob called Hope. If you looked at the map of Baghdad and the belts around Diyala province, Baqubah, if you took Predators all the way up and you kept driving, you'd hit whatever the villages that was right below Khatun. You basically run right up into it and right to the center of Khatun on the west side of Baqubah. So that was an extension of that route. So there was no direct route that was clear unless if you were going to Baqubah, you'd have to go up Tampa and then cut around by Balad and come on down through there. But we went up and did a raid up there. A lot of guys got sniped at. A lot of RPGs were shot at tanks. There was a riot. I mean, then it was Christmas Day. We were throwing tear gas. And it was insane. It took the entire.
How many people were in the riot? How big was the riot?
It took the entire brigade to hold the route.
Wow.
For my company, my platoon was the main effort to go grab this guy. So once they had it held and they said it was clear, we just raced right up the road, went to go cut in. Our strikers got stuck in the mud. We had to dismount. I had to leave a squad to help get him out and then go run over to his house. And by the time we got to his house, he left and went to the mosque. He was chirping on the mosque.
Of course.
And once he started chirping on the mosque, the people started coming out into the streets. And that was where we had trucks that were stuck. We had to string up concertina wire. It's just insane.
No firefight.
Nobody took any shots at us. No. There were people that were throwing stones, which was unnerving because of all hand grenades that we had thrown at us and on me. So
I could imagine that. Yeah, 3 stones and then a hammer.
What is it?
Right.
Exactly. So we were using a lot of non-lethal. If we identified somebody that was throwing a stone, they were taking a non-lethal.
That puts everyone in a bad position.
Yeah.
All right. How many weeks or months did you guys spend in Baghdad?
For the time that we were in Taji, we were there from the end of End of November, beginning of December, up until we got orders to go to Baqubah. But we were based out of Taji, and we would run missions maybe 5 to 10 days at a time. Warm basing out of another fob somewhere else.
So,
Baghdad.
Is Taji part of Baghdad?
It's like a next town north, and there was a fob that was there. That was a former Iraqi army base.
Okay. All right. So you guys are.
So we were our talk, everything, our beds, our chews, our barracks. The whole platoon had its own barracks because it was just a leftover Iraqi army barrack.
Okay. Oh.
Which was perfect. I mean, and we were kind of like in the middle of nowhere. So there was nothing around. And then we would get called out to go on missions and just warm base.
Yeah.
Out of there until it was time to. We were like gypsies. We had rucksacks with all our stuff, none of our personal effects. We go live someplace else, check out each fob, rate their chow.
Yeah, so you guys got to see a little bit of everything up to that point, huh?
Yeah.
What grenades, snipers, RPGs, of course, IEDs. What kind of were you guys racking up any like the enemy kills and big operations?
Not really.
No.
I mean, it was very. We went. My platoon got attached to Battle Company to go do a mission with the British SAS.
That would be cool.
Yeah. We were supposed to be the QRF for their company, and the plan was that the guys from the SAS were going to jump on their trucks so that way it looked inconspicuous. And the plan was to do a high value target raid on this guy that was running a Rusafa vehicle-borne IED network. And they were just going to. The plan was that they asked, right, everybody have their gas masks. Like, our gas mask for what? We're going to jump out, throw gas at the guy, and then capture him, drag him back into the striker, and then bring him back for interrogation. So that was the plan.
That's plan, all right.
But unfortunately, he was holed up in a little farmhouse that if we went to go approach it, he would squirt out the back. So they just made the decision to drop a couple of 2,000-pound bombs on it. So yeah, I mean, we racked up some kills like that, but for the most part, it wasn't like
super kinetic.
No, because we go to a neighborhood, we get the pitch from the unit that was on the battle space the night before. We kind of already have our plan, our set, what we're going to go in and do. And it was always like, this is the baddest neighborhood. It's the worst people. We always get sniped at here. These are the worst places. And it's great. I mean, I'm sure it was. Don't get me wrong. But then we show up with a whole brigade. Like literally.
Yeah, I mean, you get
the whole entire brigade.
The whole freaking brigade rolls in. It's like,
just kind of,
yeah.
It would kind of pacify things. And they were always appreciative, and they loved what we did, because then we would go through and clear, and then the part of the surge that they were bringing troops in was basically the 82nd Airborne Division. They were flying them in as quick as they could, and you'd hear the Chinooks flying all night long, going back and forth.
Yeah.
Them just dropping people off, and they're throwing them in the back of LMTVs and just bringing them out.
Yeah.
And then engineers are coming and building cops. Like whenever we would go out, they'd already kind of pre-identify some terrain. Like, we need to hold this area. If you find something in that area that we could use as a cop, let us know. And then they would come and build, and then the 82nd Airborne would just start running missions out of it. And they would end up taking over the battle space.
Cop in a box.
That. So
that's what they were calling it. Cop in a box.
So whoever owned the land, and then 82nd Airborne would kind of control it. So you'd have guys from mechanized units with brads and tanks and everything else, first ID, first cav, all intermixed throughout there, and 82nd Airborne. So we would come through, cop in a box, 82nd Airborne, and then then we call that good, and then move on to the next neighborhood.
Right. So you guys got the word that you're going to go up into Baqubah around December?
No, not till about March. We were
okay.
Around the end of February, beginning of March. We were getting so there was a thing that was going on in Iraq around that time. A lot of helicopters were getting shot down. So there was a platoon that was actually dedicated as a downed aircraft recovery team from our brigade. They had their strikers that sat on a pad up at Taji. There was helicopters just there ready to go, either fly them out or they would drive out one way or the other. And a lot of it was happening kind of in the Western Desert, like right west of Taji, south, like pushing out toward Anbar a little bit. And the idea was that our battalion was going to do a battalion air assault into this area of the desert. They expected a lot of technical vehicles and all sorts of other stuff to be out this way. I don't know whatever happened to that mission, but we went through our static load training. We were doing our air mission brief, and we were just about getting wrapped up with that. And they said, but we're expecting to get a frag, and we're going to go to a city called Baqubah.
Had you ever heard of Baqubah before?
No clue. The furthest north we'd been is Mosul, where we came from. In between, we reacted to a city called Tarmiya, which was kind of like on the other side of the Diyala River, somewhere up in there, because they had a complex attack. And part of what we were learning from intel was that a lot of the fighters that came for that complex attack came from the Baqubah area, or in and around there, the Palm Grove region. So we didn't know much about it. We were just kind of like standing by to hear a little bit more. Some guys were able to get some SIGACs from what had been going on. So like a much higher volume of firefights and casualties that had been taken up in that area. So it seemed a lot more intense. But we were also kind of thinking like, well, we've seen this before. We've gone to these other neighborhoods. We've heard that they're the baddest places in the world. But then we show up and we're able to put more people on the ground than they are organically.
Yeah.
So it kind of takes some stress off of them, because we're not out in place of them. We're out together. They're out owning their battle space, using their vehicles, using their men to do what they can do. And then we're adding more ass to the fight to be able to get out and start clearing different objectives and things like that. So we were pretty confident based on what our mission set had been and how we'd run things up to that point, that we could show up, we could be effective, help them out. I think we were only supposed to be there 30 or 45 days.
Oh, really?
At the most, yeah.
I didn't know that.
We were not, when we were packing up, they said it was going to be more than 10 days for sure. And we were like, 10 days was kind of like our outer limit on what we would do when we would go warm base someplace else. We knew it was going to be more than 10 days, but that we'd be back to Taji probably in 60 days at the most. So we didn't pack up any of our stuff. I mean, I basically left my room as it was. I packed my laptop. My bed was there, pillow. And we just went up. And, as you know, how long we ended up staying there, I never saw that pillow again.
So as you guys were getting closer to rolling up there, were you guys getting more reports of what was happening?
I mean, not in so much detail. We did some map recon and a little bit more analysis, but it was more so like, hey, we got to get ready to pack up to make a movement, and like, what are we packing? What are we bringing? What are we not bringing? We packed some Connex boxes with stuff that could be brought up if we needed it. So we were just kind of more like breaking down camp.
Yeah.
We're breaking down camp. That was the focus. When we get up there, we'll figure out what else we have to do. Because again, we were confident.
Yeah. All right. So what was the plan? What was the plan to roll in?
Yeah, it was going to be plan as usual. That we would go in, we'd figure out wherever our transient, barracks are going to be, or whatever facility is where we're going to sleep. Figure out where the chow is. Figure out where the briefing is, and then that night, probably like have a 1600 quick hot wash with the battalion leadership, command and staff, and all officers and senior NCOs, and then go into whatever intelligence brief that there is for the AOR. And then, depending on how our operation was was going to go. Like if the cat was out of the box and out of the bag, and they knew that we were going to be coming into the area, people would see the strikers. We would do an area familiarization before we would do an operation. So basically, every platoon or two platoons together would kind of go out and scatter about. I always wanted to find a cache. I always wanted to find a HLZ. Trying to find a place where we could get hot food, hang out, stay out of the rain, like all the good little things that were good to know in the area. I wanted to know about the NAIs that were, the routes that you couldn't drive on, why you couldn't drive on them, where the biggest bombs were.
Who gave you guys your intel brief? Was it a 520 person or was it a 112?
112. So we went to the main theater on 5 Warhorse. I think it was like a multi-purpose theater or something, whatever. We did a couple of briefings out of that same room. And basically it was whoever, I think Colonel Sutherland came, gave a little speech. Hey, welcome, we appreciate your help. Typical
niceties.
Yeah, niceties, all the BS on the front end. And then, your battalion commander, sergeant major. And then we kind of broke down into companies as to like what companies pairing up with what company. So, in true Army fashion, A paired up with B and A paired up with B, not B and B or A and A.
Yeah,
so it was, kind of makes sense to delineate. Well, is it B company from this battalion or B company?
Right.
We know it's battle with Apache and we know that it's attack with Bone. So we had the delineation set down. I think you were on leave at the time. There was an E7 that was filling in for you. And he's like, look, he went down the list. We got people here, here, and here. We have this cop that's, Bone Disney. Into rear, we have the government center. These are the routes that are black. We took sniper fire here yesterday. We got blown up here the day before. We got this, we got that.
Wow. Of all the times for me to be on leave, but and it kills me, man. But you put those dates in months in advance, and that happened. I was like, "Are you kidding me? It finally happening. I'm on leave." But I'm sure it was Sergeant Reynolds. I'm sure he gave you guys a great brief. But yeah, so he's laying it out, and is it catching your attention? Like,
yeah, it was just a lot of shit. I mean, it was just a lot of shit. It was like, this is pretty crazy. And the company commander at the time, I know that you guys had a change of command, and I know that
it was Pete Chapman.
Chapman was,
It's whose office,
taller, right? Yeah.
No,
Pete
Pete.
Shorter.
Yeah,
I know they both had 101st combat patches. And
so Pete was the shorter one.
Okay.
Colonel Captain Chapman, and he was the 101st guy, and then there was a taller one. Chris Conley, and that was ACO, and he had the I think First Ranger Bat combat patch.
Okay,
but yeah. Anyways,
I mean, we had the brief, and it was like, we all kind of got to know one another, to a small extent, and then it was like, hey, so tomorrow morning, we'll SP at whatever it was 09, 08. I'll have 2 Bradleys. Put my Bradley in the front and my XO's Bradley in the back, which I was like, only two Bradleys that are coming out with the whole company of strikers, whatever. But we'll go out. So we had like 22 strikers in the middle and 2 Bradleys on the other side.
Oh man!
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was
strikers.
saying. It's like,
whoa.
Yeah. And then we'll go fan out on our side of the river. So we were going to be on the east side of the river. Where it was Old Baqubah to rear and Buhriz.
Yeah.
Bronco troop was going to be down in Buhriz. We were going to be in Tahrir and Old Baqubah, and I think the it was kind of like a series of villages that kind of, if you went up through Old Baqubah, that kind of tied into that blue Babel along the top. We were going to do something up there. I forget. I think that totally fell off after it was kind of realized like the fight is not up there.
Yeah.
So that was the plan.
So 22 strikers, was that attack and Bronco?
That was just attack. Yeah.
That was just attack.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I could tell you, like, to have two Bradleys out there, one, if you guys had 22 strikers, that was probably one. But, we had pushed out and we were manning several outposts at the time. So,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, so that's
because we still had Buhriz.
right.
We still, Bone Disney was there. So we had already set the conditions for when you guys came up. Mm-hmm. We were going to be able to maintain a footprint both in Buhriz and Tahrir, I believe.
Yeah,
I believe that to be the case.
So I found it odd just from the perspective of what we like. We personally like to have for recovery, just to be able to have two like vehicles that can recover each other, and then have at least other vehicles that can do the protection. Like, if one of your Brads went down, we could handle the protection while the other like vehicle could join to it.
Yeah.
I've never learned of a striker being able to recover a Bradley or vice versa at that point. I think we did learn how to do that later on, but
yeah, probably.
It was it was just, I don't know, it seemed a little off. But then once we got down to town and realized like what one company is holding, it was like, yeah, well, you can only spare two vehicles to really take care of this, our the 5 cent tour. So, I mean, we came out, we went down, Victory to Vanessa, right?
Victory to Vanessa, yeah.
Victory to Vanessa. Get to the traffic control point where there was either a Bradley or a tank from, was Apache.
Yeah.
Always just sitting there scanning, looking to shoot something. You have to call into them just so that way they know not to shoot when you're driving by 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because they had no problem shooting.
Zero
problem. Yeah, they would shoot.
Yeah, that was right near the White Castle in the Earth. Yep. And I think they call it the Muford Traffic Circle. Yep. Yeah.
Yep. Get down there, bus left, come through the traffic circle to the left because you couldn't go the other way. And it was just like looking around, like, this is different. This is different. Because we've been, it was, when I say different, it was like the intersection of Tampa and Barracuda the whole way. Potmark buildings, nobody out, like complete, like, these buildings are derelict. Wow. They're not occupied by families that are taking kids to school or anything. They've been abandoned by war. So from one aspect, it was kind of comforting because the status of these buildings. You're not worried if you do have to shoot into a building because it's not going to be a family in there. But at the same time, it's like, holy shit, like this is pretty intense coming down here. And you turn the corner and you're driving toward the bridge to go over to the other side of the river, and it's the same way. So this is like not just one little corridor. This is this whole route going in here is like this. And we got into Old Baqubah, the border of Old Baqubah, and Tahrir was on the right, and Old Baqubah was on the left. We busted a right-hand turn to go down to Cop Disney, and we kind of figured maybe it would be a little bit further into the neighborhood. But then we parked and started getting out of our vehicles, and we were starting getting shot at. Just dismounting the vehicle at a cop, which we were used to, like, hey, it's kind of a warm zone, a safe zone here, and I think we started taking some rounds as we were getting out. So then, the guys in the cops started opening up on wherever it was coming from. Went inside to go do our leadership engagement, and it was humming the whole time we were there. A couple lieutenants that were there, we got to interface with, meet. I think we came up with like a hasty little plan based on some contact they had the day prior, and a couple of shots that they were taking at that time to go out the back door and do a limited clearance. And I don't know that we got 2 or 3 houses into that, and we got a call that Bronco troop in Buhriz was in a full-on firefight. And we could hear it. I mean, we're not that far away, but in a full-on firefight in Buhriz. So they wanted us to get up and leave from there to go down and help reinforce Bronco down in Buhriz. And as we're driving down, I got a call from our company commander that I needed to take the MEV to the other side of the river because our battle company has a mass casualty event. And yeah, I'm thinking like a whole MEV, like they have a MEV. MEV, you can put four people in, four, wounded people and CASEVAC them out on one. They need a second one. So I just turned my vehicles around, told them we were going to the other side of the river. I didn't know much more about it. Just, as I get more info, I'll let you know. I was going to battalion net, bumped up to battalion net. There was so much chatter on it. I couldn't really make out heads or tails what was going on, but a striker had gotten hit. I just reached out to the company commander, Captain Gore. I told him that we were on our way, bringing the MEV. What way do you want me to come in? And he was just kind of like, I don't know. I said, well, I'll meet you on your net. So I was dropping down to his net, and we were hauling ass. We were going as fast as a striker can go in that direction toward where I could see on the FBCB2 a bunch of blue dots, and I could hear gunfire. So I was kind of getting a little apprehensive. Like I don't want to like come in on the wrong end of wherever the fight is. So I kind of like slowed us down just to make sure, like, Battle 6 knows I'm coming in from this direction.
Yeah.
Just beware. And they said, no, cool, come on in. And I saw there was like a Bradley that was right on the corner. I was like, all right, well, I guess we're good then. So just scoot in this way. It was kind of like right in the middle of the, like if the move for traffic circle, if you kind of just cut that off and drove straight into that neighborhood, you could just kind of like scoot and dig in there. And my God, I mean, came around the corner and I never thought I'd see the day. I mean, there was a striker that was on its side and there was a hole in the bottom of it, right under the driver's compartment. That was, it was like a perfect hole, and everybody inside the vehicle was wounded in some capacity. Then the driver was killed. So, there wasn't anything that I could do, just bottleneck and everything. They had a firefight going on. They had all sorts of stuff happening. My first sergeant was in the MEV, Monty, somewhere, in our formation, our route of march. He jumped out with his MEV. And I just got with Battle 6, like, hey, where do you need us? And I can remember him putting us out on the perimeter, like out closer to, I guess it would be like the eastern side of like this big open area. If I remember correctly, like that whole side of the river, like move for Platoon, was like houses strung out, and there were like these large open areas in the middle. I guess there were soccer fields and stuff for the schools that were sprinkled around there. So I took my platoon over to the eastern side, and we kind of strung out. We did like a slightly limited clearance, but it was more so like, hey, we're going to strong point this area just to make sure that nothing else comes through. Staggered a couple vehicles, maybe every other block or every block for 3 or 4 blocks, and then dismounted the squads to then overwatch our vehicles and then have everything watching out.
Was there still a firefight going on?
It was kind of withering. It was withering at that point, but we were trying to get more people down because it was like, okay, next step is we're going to go into a clearance operation. So I remember I was trying to get our first platoon. Our third platoon was totally tied to Bronco Troop. And they were tied with them for the rest of the day. Just whatever.
Because Bronco Troop
was in a fight. They were just in a fight, Buhriz. Like it wasn't a withering firefight. It was just a fight, and it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
I think our company commander stayed down there, and then I was trying to raise our first platoon and MGS, who were up in that Palm Grove, whatever area.
Yeah.
I couldn't get in touch with them. I was trying to fipper with them.
So that was one striker damaged. I mean, completely
it was
obliterated.
It had to get sent out.
One KIA.
Yep.
How many wounded?
I would assume everybody in the back. I mean, if
7,
that
8?
was 7 or 8, yeah. I'm sure there's somebody was ejected. would imagine, because it was on its side.
You got every as that's going down, they get them back to dig ground evac back to Warhorse.
Yeah, ground evac back.
Yeah, calling
And
in
then,
birds down there, not a thing. A lot
no.
of people are like, "Hey, call." It's like, nah, helicopters ain't landing here, man.
No, because you'd lose a helicopter.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, those open areas were, I mean, ripe for it if you really needed it, but you're going to just lose a helicopter. That was guaranteed. You're going to lose a helicopter.
yeah,
But yeah, they ground evac out, and it was working on the recovery of the vehicle, and then clearing the area. And our first platoon finally was burst and forth. We're coming down the MGS platoon, and they were coming in, and they hit a deep buried IED. But they hit it where it was detonated more so in front of one of their vehicles. I can't remember whose it was, but I remember that it was a catastrophic loss, but I believe nobody was injured. Somebody can correct the record on that down the line for me if anybody, but I don't believe anybody. I don't definitely nobody was killed. But it was a catastrophic loss. So then that was so it was two strikers down day one, a whole Bronco troop in a firefight. And you guys were still there doing your thing, man, your cops and doing everything else. So it was an eventful first day for sure.
yeah. What was y'all's next move as a company?
We're going back to the FOB to AAR. What happened? It just we were using the set that we had faith in using, and it didn't work out this time. So we needed to get back and either change what we're doing, limit what we're doing, or something. But we also knew that we were prepping for an op. It was already kind of set, and I think the tone was set on the first night when we got in there that our first major op was going to end up being palm groves in Buhriz.
Yeah,
and that was like
that was
numero
place,
uno. Like we had to get in there. We heard stories that there was like running gunfights. There was a squad that was out on the mission. They had to basically run through the palm grove in the middle of the night and then get evac'd out by helicopter from down there. So it was like, okay, well, if that's where it is, then let's go. Let's go and do it. So that was the first stop that we were getting ready for, which we were trying to do a little recon to see where the cache was and everything else. We never made it there. FOB Gabe, at least on our first day. I think we probably did at least before we got down to Buhriz. Everybody got to Gabe to see where the HLZ was and everything. And that was always one of our predominant list of important things to do on a check into a new city or a new AO.
Buhriz IP station, Pete's got a painting of it up there.
Yep.
And they threw assaults on that, trying to actually overrun that with a platoon of infantry there. Buhriz was just it was wild, man.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't in a very good when you look at like commanding terrain and if you're going to pick out a place to do a combat outpost, there's fields of fire, entries, like all the goodness that you want. It just wasn't there, man.
No.
And so you guys, I know there was a big operation that did get pushed into Buhriz. A lot of people don't realize the palm groves, right? Like how thick the palm groves are, the terrain, like it was definitely a tough place to come down and do a mission.
Yeah, because it wasn't open. It wasn't like open forest. once we got in there, we realized like there were basically plots within the palm groves that people were farming palm trees for palm oil or dates or whatever they were getting from. So they had these fences that were around them that were basically barbed wire strung between posts, and then they wove palm leaves.
Yep.
So there was intervisible, they were intervisibility lines all the way through. And we didn't have any good situational awareness on that going in. We really could have used like topographical maps before we went in there, just so that way we could establish better lanes for movement. But shit, even just getting down there to get in was another cluster in and of itself. Mm-hmm. I think that we were supposed to have our ramps down something like 4 or 5 in the morning and clear out, because like if you went down from Tahrir to Buhriz, you had to go over a little bridge and then hit the Bird's Eye Peace Station, and then there was I'd be generous calling it a 2-lane road if you continue down. It's maybe like a 1.5 lane road, and it had like an urban stretch along it and then the palm grove thereafter. So we knew that we'd have to get down to where we were going to dismount, clear the buildings, and then hit the palm grove and then clear out and through. And it was kind of like a giant jug handle of palm groves that you had to then clear through. So attack company was going to be the southernmost, Bravo company was going to be on the north, engineers were going to clear through on the route, and then all the trucks that we had were going to hold the route. Bronco Troop was going to build out Bird's Eye Peace Station. I think they had like a cop in a box. I mean, they were going to, there were like all these things that were going to happen. But the Buffalo, or one of the route clearance vehicles, got blown up something at like 2 a.m. And that stopped the route clearance altogether. So they basically made it like 10 feet outside of Bird's Eye Peace Station on the route that we needed to clear south.
So the Bird's Eye Peace Station was already an outpost. We occupied that back in December. So we had been fighting there December, January, February. You guys, you said March?
Yeah, beginning of March, yeah.
Yeah, so it was... That was like our main piece of real estate, and we still had to do patrols up in Tahrir and Old Baqubah. Yeah, and we did an operation to push south about, I think, from the outpost to our objective area was no more than 5 miles. No more than 5 miles. Took 4 days.
I believe it.
Yeah, 4 days to go 5 miles.
Yeah.
And I think 5 miles is a little long too. But it's just the amount of IEDs that they would put into that area. And then they would overwatch it, right?
They were overwatching,
direct fire,
they were
RPGs.
Overwatching their obstacles just like we would.
Yeah, and then, indirect fire capabilities. It was, yeah, man. So that's your first couple days in, right? Like pushing down, doing the big operation in Buhriz. And then you guys jump up into like Old Baqubah area, right?
Yeah. We jumped into Old Baqubah, and it was a similar problem with Old Baqubah, if I remember correctly. Was once again, we were supposed to be out in the city by a certain time. I had somebody from what was that group, that asymmetric warfare group, a major that came down, who was actually my platoon sergeant's company commander in the 82nd Airborne when they were in Afghanistan. So they were it was nice to have somebody else to just kind of like bounce some things off of, who's been bouncing around, checking out different units throughout the country, like what's going on, like are we seeing this correct? Like, this is pretty crazy. This is a crazy town. Again, a Buffalo broke down. I forget which way we were supposed to infill to Old Baqubah, but it ended up being the same street that you would make a right on to go to Cop Disney. If you went left on that and headed north, you could bust into Old Baqubah from there. There was always a Bradley that was watching. You could kind of see the first intersection from there. They realized, like, hey, about that much of it is clear. You guys can go ahead and dismount there and then move to where your initial start points are going to be. So this was maybe like 10 in the morning, which again was a little bit more uncomfortable. I preferred that pre-dawn, get to where we're going, utilize our night vision, utilize all of our advantages that we have to get to our set positions, occupy our first house, and then begin our clearance operation from there. But this was 10 in the morning, so they get to see us coming. And we're walking up the road. I forget what the route is, but it led up to the 5-point traffic circle.
Yeah.
Up at the top. There was just like an open, wasn't a field. I mean, it was just an opening. It was an undeveloped piece of property that had a wall all the way around it. And it was just eerie having to walk up past it because there was no building there. So we had all the buildings on the other side to watch. And then we really had to start like the next block up where we would make our right-hand turn and then pivot and start clearing down toward, it was Route Pacific or Trash Alley or whatever they would call it on the other side. So we're walking up there, and I can remember, I can see everybody that was in front of me. There was one of the team leaders from the first squad that I was traveling with, Sergeant Benshaw, and we were just doing like our typical get to an intersection, kind of like a scroll to road, depending on how everything looked. If he was covering down to the right, I was looking to the left. My RTO was behind me, and he was set to go across the street, and I was starting to come down to turn to look to then take up his position, so my RTO could take up from taking the rear to look to the left. And I remember it was like slow motion, just watching the street explode. And it was a deep buried IED in the street that they detonated on us as we were dismounted walking. Totally surreal. Smoke was just kind of like filling in the blanks between everybody. Sergeant Benshaw is looking at me. I'm just yelling at him to go, telling my RTO behind me, like yelling, go. I was having like auditory exclusion. It was just where I was going deaf from the explosion being so close. Right. And we just hurried. I just wanted to get out of there just because it was like, if we were
you're on the next.
If we were going to start an ambush, we would blow something up, and then we would open up with a machine gun. Yeah. Like that, I was like, that we're going to somebody's going to hose us with a machine gun. My platoon sergeant was in the back. He was grabbing everybody, pull the rest of the platoon back to contour around and then come meet up with us. And I was just getting across the street. I saw another squad leader from 3rd Platoon stick his head out from a courtyard, and he's just yelling, "Come on in here, Billy Rose. Come on in here. Like, come on, let's go. Get up there." We're like checking each other, like, "Hey, is everybody good?" Just covered in asphalt and everything. Ears are ringing. Trying to just get on the radio, call out, like, "Hey, we just took a deep buried IED, dismounted. We're good." Trying to get the rest of the platoon up to where we were, and then just, all right, but we're good. So let's just keep driving on. Similar around the same time, then our platoon, our company TAC, I think, took a deep buried IED or I think they said it was like a suicide bike or something. It hit a side of a building, like half a building partially collapsed on them. There was a couple of guys that got like their legs pinned by concrete. I think it was the company TAC's NCO, Sergeant Byron. So they actually had to Kazivac guys out from there. But that was the start of Old Baqubah. Old Baqubah after that, it was like a big, like the gusto in the beginning. A couple, I don't think that anybody shot at us. But then after that, it was just kind of like, we were just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, just because of what we went through in Buhriz. It was like a very pensive movement, especially because they blew up 2 deep buried IEDs, or at least had a suicide bike or whatever happened to the company TAC. It was just like something else is going to happen. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think we went like almost the rest of the time, and there was like nothing significant that happened to us. We found some derelict homes, some homes that could have been used as maybe like trigger spots to trigger IEDs. I think we did find some command wires, things of that nature, but there was nothing that I can really, say was a definitive
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the Yala River Valley, Baqubah, right?
Yeah.
You guys wound up occupying an outpost up there, right?
Yeah, that was not for some time though. Because after Old Baqubah, I know that we went back. We went back to Buhriz.
Yep.
We went back to Buhriz, but we were clearing the urban area. But there was something that happened in between. I remember that there was a firefight or an argument between Al Qaeda in Iraq, the AQI, and the local Sunni militia. I think it was the 1920s Revolutionary Brigade.
All right.
There was a fracas between them, and I think they came to BIP, to the Baghdad or to the Buhriz IP station, and we're looking for help because we went back down to Buhriz and we cleared almost all that urban area. That it took us 3 days just to get through in order to turn and then go through the palm groves. We were able to clear that in the beginning of day one.
That was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Down there when those two local, because from my understanding it was two local tribes, if you will, that were fighting each other, and then you threw the foreign fighters in there too. And it was just like, hey, hold on. And then everybody was fighting Americans, right? So you had a little bit of everything. And, Bronco Troop was the first to experience basically an awakening, right? Like, I think that now that there was combat power in the area, the locals realized, hey, we're not leaving anywhere. We're going to be staying here, and we're going to the clear hold build strategy was happening.
Right.
I think they started looking at each other like, hey man, we're sitting here fighting each other, we're fighting Americans, and then you have Al Qaeda, so a lot of foreign fighters were coming into that area too, and they were killing, torturing, just the civilian population,
Imposing Sharia law.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that was a big thing that the locals were upset about.
Yeah.
I can remember my Terp coming to me on several occasions, especially in the areas that were AQI controlled, and when we went to Platoon as well, they were basically saying that all of the government stimulus, for lack of a better term, that was pumped into the area, kerosene for heating oil, cooking goods, anything, was then controlled by them to divvy out because they were basically taking over the governmental function.
So they were funding a lot of their operations.
Funding their operations through bootleg sales or black market sales. And then, imposing the Sharia law. Women can't be alone when they're outside. They have to have coverings on their faces. Even down, I can recall that we'd walk past the food stand and my Terp even said to me, you see how the tomatoes and the cucumbers are together. They're not afraid of Al Qaeda here because in Sharia they're not supposed to be together when they're presented. It was something like that. So he would start picking up on some of those atmospheric.
I've heard that through somebody else before.
It was
as
a
well.
tomatoes and cucumbers thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it was a male and a female plant or something to that effect. But that was part of their thing. So I would hone in on some of those atmospherics, and was a little bit more sensitive to it. Baghdad, we didn't do it as much. Baqubah, it started to hit home more. So when you go into a neighborhood and certain things you start to see, or the kids outside playing, okay, that's a good sign. Or the women out. If you saw a woman smoking a cigarette, okay, she's not worried about Al Qaeda right now.
Yeah. So Buhriz starts to have a little bit of a wind down there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it was a turn. Yeah, turn for the better. And we cleared through that in, I would say, record time for a clearing operation, considering the amount of terrain that we had to cover going through. But all the information that we were getting was about another village that was a little bit further down the road, Alabara, Buhriz Alabara.
Yeah.
And we were so far ahead of schedule from where we planned to be that, and the intel was across the board. Every platoon throughout the battalion was getting it. That it was this next village down to the south. That's where they all went to. That it was decided like, hey, we're gonna leave behind. I forget. Well, it was probably Bronco troop, and maybe augmented by some 112 units. We were going to go back. We had already done our static load training and air mission briefs to get ready to go do an air assault out in the western desert. They felt that we were trained enough on that aspect of it. I mean, it's a helicopter. It's like a big Striker, except the whole platoon is in it. Go down, air assault into Alabara, and clear that out. So we got back. I think we were there for a day, and that following night we were sitting there on the ramp waiting for the helicopters from 25th ID to come in and go and air assault into Alabara.
Nice. Yeah, that was route line. You guys went.
That's right.
Yeah. So you guys went down and cleared it out. All right. Did an amazing job. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What was there any big firefights down there, or was it?
So my platoon in particular, we were, I think, one of the first two platoons that were on the ground. I think it was scouts and us. My platoon was to screen. So there was the route that came down, then to the west, on the western side of it, there was like a little urban area, and then behind that were like these irrigation ditches. And we were to air assault down on the south end of that, screen up behind, and then set an overwatch. Mm-hmm. So when the rest of the company came down, they could clear through. We would be in an overwatch, basically overwatching their movement as they came through, and then route clearance was going to come down, so that way they could get vehicles down for Kazivac and whatever else. We landed. These irrigation ditches were anywhere from like 6 to 10 feet deep with like straight sides on them. So I had a couple of guys that fell into them. We had to pull them out. We lost a trigger assembly to a 240 Bravo in one of those ditches, so we were down at 240 going into that overwatch. But we stumbled across an Emir from Al Qaeda who heard the helicopters, and he ran out to like this little hiding spider hole out there. So we grabbed him, took him prisoner, brought him up to this farmhouse that we found that we were going to overwatch out of. Had a great rooftop, had all the amenities that we like, for a house that we're going to take over. It was easily defendable by a platoon, and had good overwatch. But there was a little farmhouse out in the back. So as we're going through the rest of the house, I'm with my RTO on the first floor doing whatever, trying to call in to the company commander to let him know that we're set. We got a position, blah, 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 blah. And I get over my emitter, there's guys out here. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then 6, this is 2, we need help. And I knew that they were out clearing that farm, that little shack that was out behind the house. My second squad stumbled across a mortar team that was just taking a nap. Like 3 or 4 of them just laying on the ground, and they were wrestling with them. These guys were trying to pull hand grenades out from their clothes to pull the pin, and they were all wrestling with them. So we captured a mortar team. Had a mortar team and that Emir in the house. Then we after the company commander and everybody else got on the ground, they had brought a platoon or a company of Iraqi army soldiers with them. They cut us a platoon, and they had a platoon leader and everything. They were up in this overwatch with us. And they were just giving these guys the third degree, like Iraqi culture, how they treat prisoners. And we just got to a point like, hey, we got to somebody has to leave this house. It's either going to be the prisoners or the Iraqi army, because we can't have these guys just like abusing these prisoners for the whole time that we're here. So
that'll happen.
I mean, it's their culture. It's what they do. We've seen it before. But we were supposed to be sitting there all day with either one of them. Either we're going to sit there and overwatch and guard the prisoners, or we're going to sit there with the Iraqi army and do something useful. So somebody's got to go.
Yeah.
So, finally, I think we got rid of the prisoners because the ground assault convoy had come down. So they were starting to load up some, like whatever caches that we had found, or whatever else. Loading things up, getting things out.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how did you guys get? How did you guys exfil out of that place?
Aerosol.
Yeah. Birds came back in.
Yeah, we I mean, there was no shooting the whole time that we were down there. Captured that mortar team, captured the Emir, had some just some mortar rounds and stuff, the tubes that they had for themselves. Drug that back to the LZ later that night. We were supposed to be down there for maybe 2 to 3 days, but the battalion commander said, we hit our objective. We've done everything that we need. We'll exfil out tonight. Went down to the LZ, called for a blast window. I remember everybody got upset. They're like, we have the birds are going to come in 30 minutes. We can't blow something up. There's nobody here. Just blow this shit up.
Where did you guys go from there?
Back to the
badass, dude. Yeah. Old aerosol mission like that, man.
Boom,
like
combat.
So we actually wound up going down there again. It was I want to say that was our last big company mission. We were gonna air assault in, and then we got intelligence that there may have, because you guys had air assaulted in. We received some intelligence saying, "Hey, man, there could be booby traps on the LZ now. We're gonna infiltrate in on foot." And we wound up walking in, and we went in, and we were prepped for like a 2-day mission, and we wound up having to walk out too, because the plan was to walk in, do one more clearance operation of that area, which we did pick up quite a few bad dudes, caught some dudes sleeping up on the roof, lock and loaded, ready to go, had all their kit there, just caught them sleeping. And the strikers were supposed to, actually, strikers were the ones that dropped us off. We went in on foot, probably about, a couple kilometer march. Went in, did the operations. I think we were there for 2 days as well. And then vehicles were supposed to come down and get us out. And when they were, route clearance vehicles were online, that's the Buffalo got blown up.
The Buffaloes, man.
Damn near.
It's always the Buffalo.
There was this was a big, penetrated the whole.
That's big.
Really, the whole crew got jacked up pretty good, and one of the guys, Kyle Kelly, I think he lost at least one leg. Yeah, if not
That's
two.
big.
He was close to getting killed, and to blow up a Buffalo. So based on that, it was like, hey man, you guys just need to walk back out and find the strikers, and that's what we did. And that was the last time I saw that place. And I remember exfilling through Buhriz, looking through the periscopes of the striker. And I was just like, you know what? This will be the last time I see Buhriz too. And it was. Yeah. So you guys air assaulted back to Warhorse?
Back to Warhorse. Back to Warhorse, and then I think we started our next mission planning cycle. Because I think it was then we were still okay in all Baqubah. Nobody really had a concern or too much of a concern there. Tahrir was going to be the next one. I know that was a big, everybody was ready for Tahrir. And I remember, I think you guys had named a couple of streets in there, like 42nd and Broadway. like just
42nd.
there was
CF.
the one that came off that the main road that was going south to it down toward Buhriz, and then it kind of cut and went up. And
that was
up.
Charlie Avenue.
So that was Charlie. So I was going to be our company's main effort and clearing on the north side of Charlie Avenue, and then our battle company was going to be on the south side of Charlie Avenue, and we were going to come across, and then once Charlie hit the curve, battle was going to clear out and then come up, and then I was going to stay on the other side. So we were just using Charlie like a handrail, and that was interesting. We actually, I know that we got out there early enough in the morning that we were able to get into our first positions before the sun came up, and we were doing like a limited clearance, and everything was kind of good, which was a little eerie for Tahrir because Tahrir liked to shoot. You know,
Wow.
Tahrir was good for a firefight. I mean, we got into a couple of firefights in Tahrir just on like random occasions. There was somebody fired an RPG at one of our vehicles. We ended up in like a running gunfight from Bone Disney clearing all the way down, one string houses, and it went from like 11 o'clock in the morning until we couldn't. I mean, it was dark when we left, so we knew that we were going into Tahrir, like we were going into something. So it was kind of eerie setting foot in that neighborhood with nothing or nobody shooting at us. But that changed though. Did it change? So my second squad, Nate Meyer again, he was clearing around into a building. And as you come through the couple of streets, handrailing Charlie Ave, there's another one of those kind of open fields, and there was a school in the middle of the open field, and he started taking some fire from the school. Air weapons team saw it all happen. Those guys from the 82nd, the Apaches, they had the
Wolfpack.
Wolfpack,
Yeah.
They had the an upgraded version of their TADS system, so they could fly high outside of earshot, whereas the first Cav air weapons teams, they had to fly low because their TAD system was different. They couldn't acquire targets in the same manner. These guys could fly high, you wouldn't hear them. All of a sudden, a couple of Hellfires just hit this.
Yeah, man.
Right. And Nate called me on the radio. He was like, "Hey, sir, did you call that in? Thank you." I was like, "It wasn't me." And
those guys were awesome.
And
gals.
Yeah.
And gals.
Yeah. They caught it right from the beginning. They had PID on their own. They had eyes on us. They had eyes on them, and they let it rip. And that was great. But we were still taking withering fire from over there. So it was something's there. We called it. I think they did a gun run, but it was even still it was there. We had to get around to be able to clear it out, and I didn't want to leave the house where Nate had good overwatch on it, so I left him while I took the rest of the platoon and we started clearing our way around.
Yeah.
And it took us a good little while to get around there, but eventually, I remember our third platoon, I think they were like a reserve or something. They were able to break a squad or two off to go relieve Nate, and then he could catch up to me and the rest of the platoon when and it was kind of like duskish time. We needed to clear the schoolhouse, and we needed to set up a position to overwatch him and then have our set for the night, because we knew the template really was that the main stronghold is like in the corner of Charlie Avenue where it curves around. That's where we were expecting all the contact to come from. We were kind of right. It was in that direction. It's where the schoolhouse was. So Nate was going over with his squad, and they had literally just stepped foot into the schoolyard compound. They started taking fire. There was a mosque that was next to me, and then I knew that our first platoon was a little bit further up. My 240 gunner, Joe Sonali, was sitting there, and he was like so bad wanted to open up. But I was like, dude, if you open up, a lot of your ricochets off the corner of that building are going to bust into where first platoon is. Mm. So, I mean, we were just in a bad spot for him. If we were maybe two houses up, he would have had a better line on it. And, it was just like one of those, God forbid, like, is the juice going to be worth the squeeze for him to open up? We started getting flanked. But my platoon sergeant and our third squad, Sergeant Russell, he's now a sergeant major, they were up on a roof when they heard this all kick off, and Sergeant Russell watched a guy come walking around. You know, he had the bandolier on and the man dress and everything. Had an AK, one shot right in his temple, took him out.
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, nice.
And you know, the guys talk about how smooth he was with it. He's like, yeah, I didn't even use my laser or anything because it was about dusk. You know, he could use his laser, just pop him right in the head there. But got a little bit of intel off that body. You know, the guys all wanted to have, you know, hold up the bandolier and everything as a trophy. But after that, he smoked that dude. It all kind of quieted down, and then we started hitting the caches that following day, and it was like cache after cache after cache. I remember that we recovered SA-7s, we recovered Dushkas from basements. And it was all just
so SA-7 surface to air missiles.
Yeah. We recovered a lot of stuff. I ended up in a booby-trapped house. Thank God. I ended up entering it from the rear. My platoon sergeant had been in the house, and he kept on calling radio. He's like, Jimmy, I keep on finding like all this stuff. And I remember route clearance was having a hard enough time going up Charlie Avenue, and we were running out of demo on our own. Yeah. So we had to send runners out to route clearance.
They did something like you're running out of demo because there's just so much shit to blow up.
Yeah. And so he had a big pile of shit in his house that he had to blow up.
Yeah.
With the SA-7s and everything else. And I was like, all right, let me bust through to you and see what it is. And I popped out of the house that I was in with our first squad, and I'm looking off to the side, and I see a big hole in the back of a house. I had my RTO, I had my FO. I might have grabbed like one of the guys, like just give somebody to me. We're gonna clear that house and then bust out through the other side. We go in this house, and it's kind of like you know, you look at the shelves and it's just weird shit here, like wires and everything else. And then there's like a diagram of a striker on the wall, and a reticle pattern. Like this is a bad guy house, you know. So I'm coming out through the front door, and there's like a 155 round with a piece of dead cord that's coming out the top. Red, you know, the red Russian dead cord coming out the top of it. And, you know, that was all wired to the front gate. So if somebody opened the front gate, they would have detonated that. But fortunately, we ended up coming through the back of the house. But we didn't have EOD. We didn't have any of that stuff. We had to cut the dead cord and then pile everything up in that house. So we had to blow that house. We had to blow the house across the street. Yeah. We blew up so many houses and cars, trunks of cars that were just full of mortar rounds, because they were using that to move to their mortar site as their little mobile cache. And you know, that was a very, very relieving objective to have succeeded in, because we knew that a lot of people were getting shot at in Baqubah. A lot of our coalition forces were getting shot at by a lot of those weapon systems.
Do you remember the time frame that was? What month?
Yeah, it was right. I do. It was right around April 25th, because it was my birthday.
Okay, happy birthday to you, right? Yeah. How old were you?
It's probably 23.
23,
yeah. And because you know, every time we blew up a house, you know, I'd say, make sure you guys say happy birthday to me.
Every time you
this
blew up a house,
this was like birthday present. You know, like everybody wants fireworks. You know, I get to blow up a whole bunch of houses. Yeah,
the interesting thing is like you guys went through and cleared Trier, right? Bravo Company, we had the scouts attached to us, and we had y'all's mortars attached to us, right? Yep. So we had 520 scouts, 520 mortars. Both platoons were freaking awesome. I talked to a lot of them to this day, yeah, it was definitely high adventure. But at some point, you guys wound up having like cop battle up there, right? Or cop Romeo.
Yeah. So I think that was after Tahrir, because I recall that now, that our 520 mortars and scouts were detached or attached. I don't know however you want to put it. I mean, they were working career with you guys because it was now a little bit more of a permissive environment to be able to.
They didn't use that lightly.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely non-permissive prior to being cleared, I would say. I mean, if you disagree, I don't know. It was non-permissive. You couldn't go a block, without being in significant contact at any point in time. So it was now a little bit more permissive, and they were able to, basically help put more boots on the ground, definitely keep good fortifications in Bone Disney, and be able to have patrols that are out and circulating. And that's important to that clear hold build strategy. It's like, you had something, it's clear, but now we have to build upon what we did clear and keep it secure.
Yeah.
So we could kind of turn more of our attention, and that's, I think I touched on it earlier, like our battle rhythm for attack company, going into like a platoon for 48 hours being down on rest and refit, 24 hours on a QRF, and then 24 hours as like an insector in old Baqubah doing something, making yourself useful. And that was right around the beginning of May. We had to get back out in there. I can remember May 2nd vividly. I had 4 trucks again. I was down to 3 because one of them got blown up in Baghdad. We were doing a feint on Sadr City. So it was back up to 4 trucks. We were up at the 5 Points intersection. We had set up a checkpoint with the IP, and they were good to man it. They got into a firefight. Somebody was wounded. My platoon sergeant and I had our trucks up there. My medic was out on the ground treating somebody. I mean, like a grazing gunshot, nothing that required serious attention. But they were limited on their bandages and everything else. So
yeah, we got a couple extra bandages.
Let him get some exposure and treating gunshot wounds. But my 2 other squad leaders, Daniel, was riding in our 2-4 Vic, and Meyer, who's in his Vic 2-2, which was his second. I think it was his second 2-2 Vic. Yes, because his original got blown up in Baghdad by an EFP. They were rolling around, just kind of like outside where we were, because we were stationary. I didn't like to have the whole platoon stationary. Just like have somebody moving, have somebody floating.
That's good.
They didn't want to sit there anyway with this while we were doing the bullshit, meeting with the IP guys. And I heard like a thud, but it was like a muffled thud. And the next thing I hear, Daniel on our platoon, that Sergeant Daniel, Sergeant Major now, 6, there's 1 2-2 Vic just hit a deep buried IED. It was at Trash Alley. Trash Alley or Pacific, whatever. I guess the proper, everybody did everybody call it Trash Alley?
Yeah,
I think we did. Yeah. Trash Alley, and whatever the intersection was, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was basically the first main road that you get to if you were coming off of Victory, and you can make, it was a T intersection, you can make a left or a right, just short of where we took a dismounted deep buried IED. So, I told, my platoon sergeant Roger heard it, everything, all right, we'll be right there. They mounted up, we mounted up, the IP, okay guys, we'll see you in a little bit. Go racing down there, and there it was. The 2-2 Vic is just sitting there right on the corner of Trash Alley, and the other one facing our direction. Driver's hatch was open. I think I saw Nate jumping out of his squad leader hatch off to the side, and there were just flames coming out of the engine compartment. And that was because we were like gypsies driving around in Baghdad. We had 3 days supply of POL. So we had all of our lubricants that we would need for our hydraulic fluids, everything else strapped on the side of the vehicles. And that was right next to the engine compartment underneath where this deep buried hit. Fortunately, everybody survived. Driver, Woody Gibson, I think he lost a toe. He was medevaced out of country. But that truck, I mean, and the guys inside, they were all rattled. They needed to go to Baghdad and get checked out for a TBI that we weren't too cognizant of the TBI.
Did you send
at
them?
the time.
Did
They
made it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
cool. Good for them.
Sergeant Daniel secured a house right on the corner. My platoon sergeant Roger came swinging around me and then went down to the other side to help with them doing medical treatment. He was an EMT, and they were like, Nate's definitely, he's had a concussion. He's got to go. Woody's definitely got to go because his toe is like hanging on. And then there was maybe a couple others that were just definitely rattled. I think Stu Fowler, just from the concussion of it. The problem was the route behind me was green all the way out, so we knew that we couldn't go the other way. We knew Trash Alley was definitely like a no-go street. So it was like, and this thing is on fire now and it's cooking off. So like the 2 satchel charges that we had on it, the 50 cal was just cooking off rounds. A couple of AT4s were blowing up. It was like, all right, well, the tough leader decision. Like, what are we going to risk to get people out that are not, like, if you tell me that they're gonna bleed to death, like, we're coming, well, I'm gonna knock down all the walls and get to you. But if they're not gonna die from their injuries at this present moment, let's let this thing cook off. And I think a couple of guys were upset with me about that, and I'll take that to the grave with me. That I think I made the right decision on it, just because we didn't need to risk anybody's life or complicate anybody else's life further that might have already been injured to get them out. They were good. They were safe. We let the vehicle cook to a point where it was like, okay, I think the most of it's cooked off. Drive up there. They came in the back of my truck. I had the squad that was with me pushed into another house to overwatch. And then we pulled back to the intersection in my truck, had them in the back. Colonel Antonio, his vehicle was actually doing our CASEVAC for us. Got out, threw Woody on a stretcher. Colonel Antonio and I carried him on the stretcher over to his vehicle, threw him in. Meyer, everybody, and a couple other guys that were with him that basically they had to go get checked out. They all piled into Colonel Antonio's vehicle and they took off. And my platoon just sat there for the rest of the day and watched the striker burn.
Yeah, those tires.
Oh, the tires too. Oh my
tires
gosh.
Once they're gone or once they're lit, man, it's like
you can't stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a Iraqi fire truck came out. It was like 2 guys, and they just they sprayed like a couple gallons of water on it. It just kept cooking. So we stayed out there till dark. One of your combat vehicle recovery teams came with an 88 and had to just drag it out.
Yeah. That was Bone Wrench. Yeah.
The chief that was there, he was so cool. I mean, he was like, yeah, we'll just drag it out, get the crane, we'll pick it up, put it on a flatbed, we'll bring it back, we'll be fine. And I was like,
they had plenty
knew how to do
practice,
it.
Unfortunately.
Well, I would say May 2nd was kind of like, the beginning of the unraveling kind of within our company, because we lost the vehicle now, so I was back down to 3. We had to go back and do a reset recovery. We had to account for everything that was in the vehicle that we lost. We had to consolidate back to a 3-vehicle set from a 4-vehicle set, from the 3-vehicle set that we were in. We were back out into our rotation, came off of our next cycle being out on May 6th, 6 in the morning. And that's when I got woken up, and it was our 3rd platoon had hit a deep buried IED. And they lost the whole squad. It was Sergeant Romeo's squad. Everybody but his driver on that same intersection. That same intersection where we lost Tutu Vic. So, tough day. another tough day.
That's crazy.
It was
A
surreal.
whole squad, whole truck. It wasn't like the driver got out unscathed, right?
No, not at all.
And there was
In fact, he was trapped.
there was a Russian reporter as well, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. That was a horrible day. And you guys were just there the day before?
We
The same
third platoon relieved us at 6 a.m. that morning.
that morning.
Based on our rotation, we were going to a set where it was like 6 a.m. That's when you rotate from one to the next. So if you were the QRF platoon, you became the platoon that's out doing the action platoon. And then if you were the action platoon at that 6 a.m. shift, when you get relieved, you go back for rest and refit.
Yeah.
So we were back, we were in the tent, sleeping. I remember the runner coming, waking me up. He's like, hey, I think it was Tom Highland, sir, third platoon just lost the truck. They lost the whole squad.
Yeah.
And he didn't really have any water for me or anything like that. But I was just like, I was thinking like a whole squad. And Roger slept in the cot next to me, and he just started shouting, get him up, everybody get up, get out to the trucks now. And I'm busy putting my boots on. Highland left. I think we're pretty sure it was Highland. Had already left. So I had to run down from where we were from our talk. And I remember getting down to 520's talk and either talking on the radio or talking to somebody, calling out to whoever's in sector, like, hey, my boys are 1.5. Like, we're ready to go. Like, where do you need us? And finally, word filtered back. They said, look, 2-6, Jim, just stand down for today, because we're going to need to put somebody else back out in the sector.
Wow.
So that was like, and it really hit home. For a lot of my team leaders and a lot of the guys that were around for the previous deployment. Sergeant Romeo was a very well-liked guy. He came from 2nd Platoon. He had a lot of friends, a lot of tight relations, and all the guys in the squad were really tight. Sergeant Harkins was a team leader who, he came within an inch of his life on St. Patrick's Day. 2 of his soldiers, I think it was at least 2 of them, Conroy and Hollins, got shot down in Buhriz, and he was standing right there with him. He had so many rounds go by his helmet that his helmet just kind of like the ACH turned into straw. And he was lost. It was terrible. You couldn't go back to sleep that day.
No.
We had been up all night, as it was, and we're running on a couple hours of sleep, but it was just like, what do we do now? So, just to kind of like make things spittable for when 3rd Platoon finally did come back, I think I forged a letter to the DFAC that I was the XO, so that way we could get a whole bunch of Gatorades and chips and snacks and whatever. Like, they wouldn't just give them to you. An officer going over saying like, "Yeah, I need a bunch of stuff, for these guys." Like, all right, you got to get a letter from an XO. Okay, all right, I'll have that for you real quick. Get him a letter, get a whole bunch of stuff, and then go, into like memorial services and all that. But they were tough, man. They were so tough, and like every time Colonel Townsend would come up, he'd just look over because he was coming up a lot for us. It was like every time he turned around, he was coming up here, and he's like, you guys all right? He told me a couple times. He said, Jim, we're gonna work something out. We're gonna come up here. We're gonna do something. And unfortunately, we had to go through that whole McGill again on the 10th of May. I went out with my platoon, and we went to deliberately set up on that intersection to make sure that nobody receded. And we walked in for victory, and the plan was that once it was time for us to exfil, if we had to exfil or whatever, we'd have our strikers drive in. There was like a factory that you could kind of drive through and land bridge that crossed over that would get you there. And we'd driven it before and cleared through that area. But we set up in 2 different houses. And the minute I got set in the house that I was in, my platoon sergeant, Roger, called me. He's like, hey, we got a bunch of people in this house over here. They're all dirty. They're giving us mean looks. I'm like, I got a couple of people in my house too that are like that as well. So we just kind of flex cuffed them in my house, headed out. He's like, I got a lot to clear. It was basically 3 houses inside of one compound with one wall, but you couldn't really tell from the outside. There was a video camera in the house. The video camera had all the males in the house that were out shooting at us. It was the actual video of our strikers that they were shooting at in firefights that we knew that we were in here at Baqubah. So it was like, yeah, we know what's up in this house. These guys are all dirty. It probably has something to do with the deep buried IEDs on the next intersection. So we were going through the SSE, the whole house. And then we start taking sniper fire. And then it was like a little bit more of a withering fire. It kind of, crept from like a couple shots to a little bit more to that. Now we're in a firefight. Air was black that day. They had the shamal between Spiker and us. So they didn't have any air weapons team they could put up. So it was like, we got to get out of this house because they had our heads down. So Sergeant Gantz was up with Sonali in second floor window. They had the 240 and they were just taking turns rocking on it. Just to put down a base of fire so we could clean up and get out of the house. We took everybody. Women, men, everybody. Flex.
Tag him and bag him, man.
You're all coming out the back. I had a random old guy that showed up to the front door in the middle of
Take him too.
And I was like, where the fuck did he come from? In the middle of the firefight. So right. I brought him in.
That's not normal behavior, man.
It's not normal, yeah. Brought him in. He didn't have anything on him. He was just an old man. Flex cuffed him to the house. We're like, fuck it. We went out the back, busted down a wall. Called the strikers, come on up. First striker made it across the land bridge. Second striker hits a deep buried right in the middle of the land bridge.
Right.
But again, it was another lucky one at least. It was nobody was hurt. I mean, nobody was killed. Driver was hurt. His back was compressed, but it was stuck right in the middle of the land bridge. So we had all these prisoners. We had 2 houses on either side of the street that could overwatch. We had a striker on our side. All right, well, we're going to hunker down. Now we're still starting to take fire. They readjusted from wherever they were sniping at us so that way they could snipe at the vehicle that was sitting in the middle. It wasn't going to hurt anybody in there. But we had the 50 cal. We were searching. Had our MGS platoon come out and set up. They still had the ATGM, so they could kind of go into a watch and shoot to see if there was anywhere that they could find it. I was able to get a call for fire, and they fired 155s in the middle of this open field.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
We actually probably had the Excalibur by then, which was extremely accurate.
It was.
Yeah.
We fired
that was a game changer. That was a game changer.
We didn't have a really good target though. I mean, it was an open field, and we knew the direction the fire was coming from. It was just we needed to do something in the immediate just to kind of like get their attention. Like we're not fucking around.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, unbeknownst to us, they also had I guess a couple of F-16s that were pushing on station that were flying out of Buhriz, 1,000 miles an hour to get up there for a tick. But got through that, and then our company commander called on the net that he was going to come with a recovery team to come in and get us out. As he made the turn to come on, his vehicle hit a deep buried IED.
Yeah, I think Bone came up shortly after that. Yeah. I mean, we would be mutually supporting anyways, but
always whenever shit was going down, you guys were there, and vice versa. I mean, it was just like that's like the natural.
I'm thinking about that day, like, damn, they just lost a striker. All right, they got another. They're going to do self-recovery. Damn, they just okay. time to go up and. How many strikers did you guys wind up losing?
I couldn't even tell you. I know my platoon we lost 2-2 in Baghdad to an EFP. We lost 2-2 in Baqubah to a deep buried. We lost 2-2 again up at the 5 points in Baqubah to a deep buried. We lost, I think 2-3 Vic, maybe at one point.
Yeah.
And my vehicle took an RPG. They used to always say, like, hey, your vehicle doesn't get hit enough. You got to get hit a few more times.
I'm sure the wealth, right?
And the one RPG was enough. It knocked me unconscious. But
was there any other major ops up there?
Yeah, there was another. So that was we were getting right into doing a clearance just north of Old Baqubah, and that's when we ended up establishing Cop Romeo. That was up by the 5 points there. So we had a new company commander come in. Wasn't new. He had familiarity. He was the battle company commander who handed over to Captain Gore, and then from Captain Gore, and he went to headquarters, and then from headquarters came to us. So he was battle, headquarters, and attack company commander. So we had good familiarity with him, and everything kind of started clicking and popping with him. Like everything was in a good spot, you know.
Yeah.
We started making good strides, and then we went into Arrowhead Ripper after that. Shortly after, it was about mid-June, I think, and that was good. That was good to have the rest of the brigade in town, because that was really, I mean, that town was like a brigade needed to be in that town, not a brigade running all of Diyala with a battalion kind of like stretched thin. That town needed a brigade, and then the rest of Diyala needed a brigade.
Right. Well, here's a good stat for you. So we had the government center, right? So that was considered. I don't want to call it a combat outpost, because that's not what it was, but it was
Secure.
And then we had the Buhriz IP station that Bravo Company manned. So, and then Apache Company over on the west side in New Baqubah had White Castle.
Yep.
So that was 2 combat outposts, and then there wound up being 16 combat outposts in that area, and almost with Arrowhead Ripper. Arrowhead Ripper was the most consolidated amount of forces, almost 10,000.
Yeah.
It was the second largest troop concentration outside of Phantom Fury.
Yeah.
The big Fallujah fight.
Yeah.
That's a lot of troops.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there were guys, I was bumping into lieutenants that I was in IOBC with.
Yeah.
There was this guy, I think his name was Akuzio. He got blown up in Kirkuk with 25th ID and got medevaced home, and he was already back. He was like, yeah, we're supposed to be taking a sector in Old Baqubah while you guys do this op.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah. Hey, have fun over there.
Yeah, it was good to have. I mean, Arrowhead Ripper came in. That was the real.
I think 2505 from the 82nd came in.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was the at least the company, maybe a company plus, half a battalion from 25th ID.
Yeah.
We had our other Tomahawks from 123. They came in. They on the morning of. They were in stride. Came in, hit their assault positions in Mufrik, and started clearing while we went down to Katoon and started clearing up.
You know, my company's strength swelled to over 225 people. We had a platoon from the 82nd. We had a platoon from the 25th. We still had the scouts. I don't think we had the mortars, because
Mortars came for they were supporting us.
Yeah, Drew Jensen. I think that was like the last time that was like the last week, I believe, that they were with us, was the week that Captain Jensen got hit from the mortars, and eventually succumbed to his wounds. But that was last that we worked with the mortar team. But the scouts worked with us plenty, but Arrowhead Ripper was absolutely something that needed to be done, and thank God it happened, man. But yeah,
that was an awesome display of combat power too. I mean, just the sheer level of planning and the deconfliction of the gates that you'd leave the fob from. I mean, just because there were so many people that were coming in and out. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
And you're watching it all in your nods, seeing air weapons teams of 4 Apaches that are flying through. And there's an AC-130 on station. There's GMLRs that are coming across, and everything is synchronized on the targets that it's hitting.
Yeah.
It was just an absolute awesome sight to see.
It was.
And be a part of.
What was there any other major contacts after Arrowhead Ripper, or did things pretty much subside? And because you guys didn't stick around too much longer after Arrowhead Ripper.
No. We had to go back to Old Baqubah. I remember that because we had at least an element from 123 came. We did Old Baqubah again. I think 2505 did an air assault into the Palm Grove, and they were clearing down. We came up on the north end of it and started clearing down. There was a bit of a firefight, but then it was like it was over.
Yeah.
And we walked through the rest of Old Baqubah, cleared it. I cleared all of Old Baqubah again. It was Operation Old Baqubah again, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything was named like Regular Justice. I don't know. They kept putting numbers.
Yeah.
Into it,
And after Arrowhead Ripper, we had partnered with the concerned local citizens,
yeah.
and you guys had pulled out of Old Baqubah. I'm not sure where Attack Company went.
We were in Platoon. Yeah, we were still in Platoon because we ended up building a cop out of a schoolhouse down there. It was it was like being in another just like being in another city. It's just such a different area as compared to like an Old Baqubah to Rio.
Oh, yeah.
It's just totally like unto its own. But it we were down there for a long time. I think we came back to the FOB. We were started getting to like a battle rhythm, and then it was around the end of August, 4th Brigade combat team, 4th Striker Brigade combat team was starting to rip in, and we were starting to bring platoons out, just showing them like, hey, this is where this is where that is, and we were starting to pack up and start making our movement to go back to Taji. Cool. I can't remember the date, but it was definitely around the end of August when we were pivoting to come out. But it was so much going on. It was like hey, we're out. You know, that's a good spot to sit here and say, hey, kind of reflect, right? Like you were a young platoon leader. Yeah.
5 weeks at the unit before you were overseas.
Yeah.
Went to one platoon that you've never trained on strikers in your life.
No.
And now here you are leading them. And then you get the change of mission, like, hey man, you're going to go from the tank killer platoon
right.
to a line platoon. Another change of mission.
Yeah.
You guys operated at 4 if you count Khartoum. Well, Baghdad. What was the first thing? Mosul, Baghdad, Taji, Baqubah, and Khartoum, right?
Yeah.
That's quite the ride, man.
Yeah.
And you brought all your guys home?
A couple were wounded.
Yeah.
All of them came home. Sadly, a couple of them, fell on rough times coming home. One was locked up pretty shortly after we got back. He went AWOL. I mean, wasn't in the right frame of mind. There was a lot of guys that were not.
Yeah.
A lot of drinking, alcohol related incidences, some drugs for sure in there as well. Our platoon medic had a suicide by cop type of situation, and then another one of our soldiers had committed suicide a little bit more recently. It's hard. As having been, a former leader of theirs and everything, you're together, you're with one another all the time. You're like brothers, family. It's tight. The way that you come back to the United States, I know that they try to build in decompression. Like, you're gonna sit at Taji for a while. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. Like, we didn't need to sit at Taji as long as we did. Guys needed to get home. Guys needed to be at home and see family and be with people, because they were gone 14 months at that point in time, 14 and a half months.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
Especially, and sorry to interrupt, but yeah, like you said, typically you start off high and go down low, man. Yeah. This was like, you guys grinded it out and then got thrown into a meat grinder for, 4 months, 5 months. Wow.
And then you go home, and it's not, it wasn't the unit anymore. It was people retiring, people getting out, E6s that are going to different schools, E5s that are rotating. Everybody's off in the 4 winds, so they're all dealing with whatever they're unpacking mentally on their own. The unit, I think, needed to stay as a unit longer, tighter, so that way people could keep control on those 1s and 2s that were kind of losing.
Yeah, it's
the army, the balance,
right, and some people are stop lost, and I mean it just messes everything up. People are trying to get promoted and they have to go to schools. It's tough balancing act, man, and a 14-month deployment just totally throws it off balance for sure.
Yep.
What are your final thoughts? You want to give a shout out to all your platoon buds?
Oh my God, yeah. If I didn't mention any of them already, I mean, all my squad leaders that I had: Tarman, Meyer, Daniel, Russ, Sergeant Gantz, Roger, guys that I had from MGS, lights out, Troy Monteo, K-Rock, Kenneth Howard, he was a platoon sergeant. Stogner was, I don't know, I guess you call him like a gunner, section leader, or whatever. They were all aces. They really were. And MGS, they brought all their guys home too. And a lot of it is to the credit. I mean, it really is to the credit of the training that they had by the NCOs and the officers, the people that were there beforehand. I mean, I was the caretaker. I only showed up 5 weeks at a time. I just, brought whatever fundamental knowledge that I had with me from school, IOBC, all the knowledge that I sucked up from anybody else that could bathe me in it, from the stories of experiences that they've had, and kind of like right time, right place, and the sergeant major that told me at Ranger School that life insurance tab was going to be or life insurance for my soldiers is on my shoulder. I mean, I think it's a load of shit, but you gotta have it, you gotta want it. You learn from failure. I never got lost again. I haven't been lost since. So
what that young leader doesn't necessarily have to be in the military, but that young up-and-coming leader, what's a piece of advice you give him or her?
Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Be tenacious, whatever you're doing. Believe in yourself. I think if you can do those 3 things, I mean, you're unstoppable. People will be interested in following you, and inspired to see you.
Cool. Well, Jim, I think this completes your debrief, and I think you earned that coffee mug over there.
I appreciate it.
All right, brother. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your service, and thank you for your service to our country, and big shout out to all the 520 soldiers, leaders, officers, non-commissioned officers. That was one hell of a fight. A lot of people never heard of Baqubah. A lot of people still haven't heard of Baqubah. But I know there's just under 10,000 people that do know about Baqubah. And within that, 520 and 112 certainly knows of Baqubah very intimately. And unfortunately, some of the family members do too. So it's important to share the story. And I know it's not easy coming up here and sharing all them thoughts, but nonetheless, I appreciate it, and it is a form of service and continue to serve. So I much respect, much appreciation. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
That's a wrap. Cool, man. We're out. That's it.